The Trump administration now wants it to make it possible for people to, well, let me give you an example. Let's say that I had a, I'm the employer here. I own this business. And that one of my employees started trying to convince everybody that they should become Satan worshipers or Catholics or followers. Some religion, right? And just, constantly was talking about it and had paraphernalia all over their desk, and everybody was coming and complaining to me. And, right now under the law, I could say to them, stop it. Your coworkers do not want to be evangelized. So, give it up. Go someplace else. Become a preacher. But Donald Trump just issued a memo yesterday. Now, this only applies to federal the federal workforce. But Donald Trump issued a memo saying that, federal employees came out of the Office of Personnel Management, the OPM, quote, provides clear guidance to ensure federal employees may express their religious beliefs through prayer, personal items, group gatherings, and conversations without fear of discrimination or retaliation. They go on to say employees engage in conversations with fellow employees, including attempting to persuade others of the correctness of their own religious views. Now, I have no problem with people saying, hey, I'm Catholic and I love the Pope, or I'm a Buddhist and I'm a big believer in peace, or I meditate, I'm into transcendental meditation, or talking about their religion in passing or as part of a or I have to take Saturdays off, a Jew or a Muslim for that matter. I would have no problem with that, and I don't think most people would. But that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about evangelism. This is talking about basically harassing your fellow workers. The director of the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, his name is Scott Kupor, K-U-P-O-R. I think I'm pronouncing it right. He said in a statement, quote, federal employees should never have to choose between their faith and their career. Well, which is a really kind of weird statement. I mean, does that mean that if you can't, in your workplace, try to convert your fellow workers to your particular religion, that you have lost your religion? Seriously? That, if somebody, and by the way, how's this going to get used? I mean, are we going to start seeing federal employees who are followers of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster wearing their colanders on their heads, which is the kind of, what they do, to work? Are they going to have, his on posters on the wall? What about the Satan worshipers? This is where these guys always break down. Right? Because when they do stuff like this, when they talk like this, when they put into place rules like this, what they're thinking is the evangelical Christians are going to be happy, they're going to be able to use this, and that's what we want because we're even. And, evangelical implies evangelism, which implies proselytizing, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I mean, it's like, Roy Moore, when he was the judge down in Alabama. And saying, oh yeah, you can put the 10 Commandments on state. No problem. We can have religious statuary here on the State House lawn. So what happens is the Church of Satan comes along and they come up with a statue of Bahamut or whatever, however you pronounce it. The goat god with the horns, sitting on his throne, who many interpret to be a version of Satan. And they say, well, cool, let us put our statue out there. And all of a sudden, everybody's going, well, let's get the religion off the lawn. And I suspect that that's the direction this is going to go. Although, I mean, the federal workplace is getting pretty scary these days because they're just firing people left and right, completely ignoring civil service rules that say that if you're going to fire somebody, you have to have cause. You have to give them a reason. You have to give them 30 days to contest it, or maybe it's even longer than 30 days. You have to give them a certain period of time to contest their firing. There's a board that you can go before. You know, I mean, there's a bunch of protections built into the Pendleton Civil Service Act. You know, and the Trump administration is ignoring these things. You know, Elon Musk can fire you. Big balls can fire you. Anybody can fire you. And so I said that if people wanted to use, you know, the church or the fine spaghetti monster, or even Islam, that they would simply get fired. So maybe it won't work out the way that I'm guessing it will. The president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which, by the way, is a sponsor of this program, called this, quote, a gift to evangelicals and the myth of anti-Christian bias. Yeah.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that will link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmann.com.
We say fight back!
Today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Black Panthers, Portraits from an Unfinished Revolution, edited by Briasha and Yohuro Williams. This is from Chapter 1, In Defense of Self-Defense, Pathways to the Black Panther Party. People joined the Black Panther Party for many different reasons. The moment of politicization was different for everyone, but a few were commonly shared, including the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and the 1965 Watts Urban Rebellion. A more general sense of frustration and alienation compelled others to join the Panthers' ranks. The party exerted an enormous pull on the imagination of the members, especially those who had experienced police brutality. In the rebellious spirit of the times, the party's bold stance on self-defense resonated with those seeking fresh alternatives for achieving social justice and black liberation. Party members expressed a deep appreciation for other aspects of the Panthers program, including its community service programs, which grew out of a genuine love for the people. My neighborhood friend, a sister that I've known since I was about 11 years old, said, "Claudia, I want you to go with me. We're going to go and hear these Panthers speak at PS9, which was a school in our community." I said, "Okay, I'll go, I'm down." I listened to these brothers speak and I heard the pitch. I saw the determination and I saw the compassion. I thought, wow, this is the feeling that I used to get when I went into clubs and popped my fingers and got on the dance floor. It was the same feeling, except it was bigger than me. It was full of love of the people. No longer did we have to argue and fight about, what are you looking at me like that for? Or don't step on my sneaker, or this is my block. Now we really had something to fight for. We had a people to fight for. This is bigger than any gang or club. We had a goal. We had something to look forward to, which was the betterment of black people. It was most definitely something that I was searching for, but I didn't yet know what that I was searching. I didn't find it. It fell on me. That was the first meeting. That's what actually started the wheels in my mind for me to become political. I was rank and file. I did a lot of things. The easiest way to say it is just to imagine worker bees. You got one queen, everyone else works. Rank and file. Those were the worker bees. We did it all. The one host was teaching the political education classes on 7th Avenue in front of the Harlem office. That was the most fruitful. But anything I did, it was for the love of the people. Wherever I was, wherever I was sent, or whatever I had to do, it didn't matter anymore because it was for the love of the people. We were trying to get the word out. If I had to sell 125 papers in a day and I got close to that goal, then I did a good job. I was originally from Queens, the Corona branch of the Black Panther. When the Panther 21 were arrested and went to jail, in order to keep those offices open and functioning, Panthers were sent all over the city to Harlem. I was one of the Panthers that ended up in the Harlem branch. That's how I got to be there on Wednesday nights to give the PE classes, the political education classes. I was extremely nervous the first time, but once I found my voice, then it went like clockwork. A lot of the people in the community who were just walking by were like, well, let me stop and see what this little girl is talking about, because I was indeed a little girl at that time. We started off every PE class with a 10-point program, and we ended every PE class with, okay, let me hear from you guys. What do you want to see different in your community, and how are you living? Then we would get the feedback, and then we would know how to concentrate our efforts. Rent strikes were crazy, because if you had to live like that, why should you pay rent? We did clothing drives. We did food drives. We did, of course, the breakfast program. There were a lot of other things that happened, and they might have been more meaningful, but those PE classes stayed with me. We were outside on the street in front of the office. When you were giving a class or you were having a talk inside the office and there were only Panthers around you, the feeling was just different than outside on the street. The Panthers knew what you were doing because they were Panthers and they were doing the same thing. Outside, there were constant questions and answers with the people. You had to give yourself up when you were outside in that crowd. You never knew who was going to say, we don't care about that, we don't care about you, you need to go away. There were a lot of people that just did not know where we were coming from and were afraid that if they were seen in the office or if they were seen asking questions, that they'd get reprisals, that they'd end up getting hurt. They were afraid. Things went so fast. Time seems to accelerate when you're always looking over your shoulder. At this time, it was all-out war against the Panthers, and brothers are being shot down in the street or set up or going to jail for years. We have brothers in jail since that time, 40, 41 years. We've had brothers that we've lost on the inside that we can't let the world forget. The government said, okay, we're going to lock them up and throw away the key and no one will ever care. But it's not true. We want them out. We want freedom for all political prisoners. We don't want any more of them to die on the inside. That's the biggest injustice. There were times when our cadre consisted of almost nothing but women, and that was when the brothers were locked up or had to go underground. I remember being on a front line against a policeman on horseback and being 6 months pregnant. What we wanted was a simple street light, and we got the community out there and we blocked traffic. I didn't know whether I was going to be trampled, my baby killed, but I knew I had to be there. I was an active member of the party from 1968 to 1971, and in those few years, I aged 10, 15 years. We didn't have much time to be little girls. We went straight to womanhood. Talking about these things is bringing up all of these feelings, though I hadn't thought about or touched on them for a long time. It seems that as you get older and you look back on the things that you've done in your life, you say, oh my God, I could have gotten killed then. When you're young, fear is not really in your vocabulary, and once you look back, you wonder, why wasn't I afraid? We didn't have much time to be afraid. It was all about survival. The Black Panthers.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, top of the day to you. It's, what is it, Mini Friday? That is Thursday. The day before Friday. Welcome. We have a lot to talk about today. We have two people who are going to drop by the show. Start out with the cruelty machine inside Donald Trump's America, where pain is policy and fear is the fuel. Did you know that the word Gestapo in German literally means state secret police? That's what we seem to now have with ICE. And the guys who have been deported to El Salvador are starting to speak out about the horrors that they experienced. I'll tell you about that. Also, Trump the Grifter strikes again, this time with the G20. We'll get to that. And new evidence was Epstein's jail video manipulated. CBS is all over this. In the second hour of our program, Phil Ittner is going to drop by with a live report from Kyiv, Ukraine. Also, are we seeing the price increases as the tariffs hit home? Sure enough, inflation's and there's a new threat to Social Security coming from the GOP. In the third hour of our program, Jason Egenberg is going to be with us. There was a time, imperfect, often hypocritical, but real, when American foreign policy tried to be about more than the flag, the dollar, or the deal. It was an era that we call democracy promotion. That has come to an end, and this is a really big story. I'm looking forward to this conversation with Jason. He's got a great Substack newsletter. And climate change alerts, severe as a Delta plane to make an emergency landing after 25 passengers were injured. Are you ready for a doubling or even a tripling of the amount of severe turbulence on your flight? Yikes. But to start, my daily take, my rant today over at HartmannReport.com and here on this program is titled The Cruelty Machine Inside Trump's America, where pain is policy and fear is the fuel. Earlier this month, ICE agents detained a 6-year-old Honduran boy battling leukemia as he left an immigration court in Los Angeles with his mother and sister. In other words, he and his family were trying to follow the rules. A child fighting for his life was ripped from his fragile medical routine and locked away for over a month, interrupting his treatment, crying himself to sleep every night in a concrete cell instead of a hospital bed. This was not a mistake. This is cruelty by design, an intentional act of terror by a government that now treats compassion as weakness and suffering as a political weapon. ProPublica this morning has a shocking report out. It's titled Bloodied Faces, Sobbing Children, Immigration Officers Smash Car Windows to Speed Up Arrests. They have video of over 50 times that ICE officers have walked up to somebody's car and just smashed the window, reached in and grabbed people. The reporters call this level of police brutality unprecedented. They said they've never seen anything like this from any police agency in the history of America, or at least the recent history of America. And The Guardian reports in an article titled Georgia Detainee with Prosthetic Legs Who Objected to Flooded Cell Sent to Solitary about a detainee who in the state of Georgia who, this guy, he came to the United States as a small child on a medical visa. He went through 16 operations. He only has 2 fingers on his right hand. He has no legs. He has prosthetic legs. He's lived in the United States virtually his entire life. He's 46 years old now. He works as a barber. He's active in promoting cancer awareness in his community. He got engaged 10 days before ICE detained him. He was in the process of getting a green card. He had been approved for this process. And they still detained him and locked him up. I mean, this is crazy. When Trump came down that golden escalator, well, it wasn't even a golden escalator. It was just that's the mythology of Trump, right? That escalator 10 years ago and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. We should have known what was coming. I mean, a lot of people thought it was just bombast or political performance art. No, it was cruelty as a political strategy, as an ideology, as a governing philosophy. And here we are on the last day of July of 2025, 6 months into Trump's term. And, it's pretty impossible to deny. This is not incompetence. This is not accidental malice. This is deliberate, strategic, and authoritarian. Cruelty is not a bug in Trumpism. It is the central operating system. It's become the organizing principle of today's GOP. Right-wing media stars bragging about ICE's brutal tactics. And it's not, by the way, just this administration is not just forcing their hate and ire and destructiveness, frankly, on migrants or protesters or the poor or minorities. They're going after democracy itself. When they normalize suffering, when they use state power to punish the vulnerable and reward the cruel, they erode everything that holds a pluralistic society together. This compassion, we're all in this together. This is the essence of every civilized society. And Trump and the Republicans who are following him are trying to rip that to shreds. I mean, look at their so-called big, beautiful bill. They call it patriotic and pro-growth. It transfers trillions of dollars from the pockets and homes and retirement accounts and savings of average working people into the money bins of the morbidly rich, the top 1%. And it's going to strip health care from an estimated 23 million Americans. It's even going to gut Medicare, not just Medicaid, but Medicare as well, as a result of the pay-go provisions that were passed by Newt Gingrich back in the day. It raises taxes on middle and low-income homes and cuts taxes on billionaires. It slashes funding for Medicaid, food stamps, school lunches, Pell Grants, Head Start, and housing assistance, cuts Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, this is nuts. And then it turns around and hands $4 trillion in tax breaks to Trump's friends, the 13 billionaires in his cabinet, and himself, a billionaire himself. And the billionaires who have changed the algorithms of their social media programs to promote Trumpism and right-wingism and fascism and downgrade pro-democracy speech and what they call liberals. You know, under Trump's second term, ICE has become functionally America's Gestapo. As I said earlier, that word literally means secret police or secret state police. And like their 20th century predecessors, they operate by inspiring fear. In our case, with black vans, anonymous uniforms, hidden faces and badges, unrestrained violence, and warrantless searches. This is Trump's domestic terror squad. And they're not designed to protect, but to intimidate, and they're answerable only to him, which was true of the Gestapo as well. This isn't just authoritarianism, it's also moral rot. I mean, Trump's cruelty is designed to destroy our collective sense of what's right and wrong. It's just that simple. For today's Republicans, empathy is now called woke or weakness. Helping your neighbor is called socialism. Faith has been turned into a weapon for the powerful. You know, with idiots like Franklin Graham out there, you know, promoting this kind of hate. You know, supposedly Christian pastors praising a guy who brags about sexual assault, pardons rapists and cop killers, and surrounds himself with grifters and predators. And let's not forget Jeffrey Epstein and the cover-up that's going on right now of elites in his orbit. What would Jesus say about this? I think we all know, right? What did he say about the money changers in the temple? The Republican Party today wraps itself in the language of faith and family, but what they practice is cruelty, racism, misogyny, and hierarchy. They're criminalizing compassion, turning public school teachers, judges, social workers, and librarians into targets for harassment, encouraging neighbors to report each other, celebrating vigilantism, banning books, persecuting trans kids, militarizing the police, and calling all this freedom. Trump, the entire GOP has bought into this. From J.D. Vance, who once warned about Trump's destructiveness and now echoes his every word, to state governors outlawing drag shows while doing nothing about gun violence in their own schools. This cruelty, this violence, this cult of death, and the deaths of our school children are the feature of the GOP, not the bug. This political movement and the inequality, the economic inequality, is ripping apart our middle class, tearing apart our society. And all through it, the Republicans are blaming the victims: poor people, black people, immigrants, activists, brown people, women seeking reproductive care. It doesn't have to be this way. We need to return to morality, not the fake, punitive morality of the so-called Christian right, but the stuff that Jesus, feeding the hungry, welcoming the stranger, binding up the brokenhearted, lifting up the fallen. That's not radical leftism. It's the center of every faith out there. And government is the only force large enough to address this. It can't happen just through private charity. Keep in mind, only 26% of eligible voters in America voted for Donald Trump in the last election. 3 out of 4 Americans either didn't vote or did not vote for Trump. We are the majority, and we must act like it. They are afraid of your voice. So double check your voter registration every month, especially if you live in a red state where they're purging people off the voting rolls like crazy. And let's bring compassion and morality back to America. Let's demand that our elected representatives do the same before it's too late. Pass it along.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Stay with us. And welcome back, Ziggy and Oni out in New York. Hey, Ziggy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm going to change my topic just slightly because of what you were talking about. And you rattled off at least a dozen, 2 dozen reasons why people should be upset out on the street and just angry. But they're not, And people think that maybe this Epstein thing will bring Trump down. I really don't think it will. I'm still of the idea that it's going to have to be something that affects average Joe and Jane Doe to actually hit them, their pocketbook or something else before we're going to get the outrage of people in the streets. Just because, like yesterday's GDP numbers, basically they're all fake. And even the news media knows that they're fake. But they're just accepting it and believing that they're real. And, what I'm seeing here is until something happens that affects the person who isn't paying any attention, all this stuff is still going to go on. What are your thoughts?
I think there's two pieces to this, Ziggy. With regard to the Epstein thing, I don't think it's going to cause a large number of people to turn against Donald Trump. But what it is doing is reducing the enthusiasm of his voters. And, if just 1 out of every 100 voters in America had voted for a Democrat instead of a Republican in the last election, we would have a Democratic House, Senate, and White House. So diminishing the enthusiasm of right-wing voters is a good thing. And the Epstein thing is doing that. And I think we'll continue to, although we'll see. The cover-up has begun in force, and it looks like the whole right-wing media system is starting to buy into the cover-up. But that said, I agree with you also that if Democrats want to get votes, they need to be, number one, pointing out how Trump is destroying the economy. And I think that's going to become as we head toward the midterms. And number two, they need to be offering a countervailing vision. And I'd like that vision to go back to Franklin Roosevelt, to go back to the second, Bill of Rights, his revisions of the New Deal that he was promising, and I think it was 1941 when he was talking about this stuff, and in particular, be campaigning on free college for everyone and low-cost health care for everyone, a Medicare for all kind of system. These things are very, very popular, and it's just core essential stuff, and also starting to tax the billionaires. Those three things are very, very popular. What do you think?
I do too, but I'm still on the fact that until something happens that the average person all of a sudden says, oh, this is now hurting me. A lot of them think it might, don't really know. But I walk around and I talk to people, and a lot of people are like in a daze, and I'm just, the more I think about it. And also, last night I was on the Indivisible 1 Million Rising training, and they're doing training on how we're going to be able to protest in the future, how we're going to have to fight this fascism. And people might want to check that out a little bit. I put links on my site, nbribes.com, but you can go to Indivisible and find it there.
Are there any more large protests planned?
Not at this point, but we're preparing.
Yeah.
I think more than anything else right now.
Good.
Is what the best way to put it.
Keep us up to date on that, Ziggy. Thank you very much. And indivisible.org, of course, and nbribes.com. Thanks, Ziggy. It's 21 minutes past the hour. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So back when Donald Trump debated Kamala Harris, he was asked about world leaders and whatnot, and he went off on this thing praising a guy named Viktor Orban and saying he's a tough guy, he's smart, he's the prime minister of Hungary, and he loves me, basically. So who is Viktor Orban? Well, it turns out Viktor Orban is a guy who took over Hungary in a regular election, the prime minister, and then turned it into basically a neo-fascist paradise for right-wingers. All the media is now controlled by right-wing oligarchs. He's packed the courts. He's changed the Constitution so that they have things like gerrymandering and voter suppression, so he always wins every election. He throws people in jail for criticizing him, even on Facebook. I mean, this is what Hungary has become. Fox News loves it. Tucker Carlson did his show from there for a week, and that's what Donald Trump wants to do to America. You can read the whole thing over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Trump's New Hero, the strongman who crushed democracy in Hungary. Check it out.
Down the golden escalator, man rode in, spoke of walls of fear, of who's to win. With every promise came a darker dream, turning empathy to rubble in his cruelty machine. This is Trump's cruelty machine, a grinding gear of hate unseen. Families shattered, futures torn apart, cold steel tearing hope from the heart. They strip rights from the struggling and poor, feed the rich while closing every door. From Medicaid to school lunch is gone, pain becomes policy, innocence undone. Inside Trump's cruelty machine, where fear is fuel and suffering's routine, a 6-year-old lost in a cell's cold glare, a man detained with no rightful care. Ice fans rolling at midnight's hush, silencing voices without any fuss. Empathy called weakness, faith turned to shame, while the billionaires cheer in their halls of flame. Deporting researchers who came to heal, turning workers' dreams into sealed-off fields. Children wail unheard through steel-barred scenes. A republic by the cruelty machine. This is Trump's cruelty machine, where power devours the unseen. But voices rise, outraged and loud, to reclaim justice, to stand unbowed. When compassion is weaponized and kindness is demonized, we break the gears, disrupt the scheme, we'll dismantle Trump's cruelty machine.
There you go, 26 minutes past the hour, Donald Trump's cruelty machine. Nate has made that song into a music video, and we're going to post it on YouTube later today. God, why am I here? Flight attendants crying as Trump deportees are beaten on planes. That's the headline over on Raw's Story from an article by ProPublica. They're telling the stories of some of these people who were sent to CCOT and this concentration camp, this prison in El Salvador. People who were actually in the process of getting, who had been accepted to be in the United States by the federal government, had permission to be here. ICE strips them of that permission and then puts them on a plane and sends them to a foreign prison. This is insane stuff. I have a little more on that story, and then I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. I'll be right back with you. Today, we're reading from It's Even Worse Than You Think, What the Trump Administration is Doing to America by David K. Johnston. This is from page 61, the chapter titled Forgetting the Forgotten Man. In 2010, the U.S. Department of Labor created a website to honor workers who died on the job. Quote, more than 4,500 workers, lose their lives on the job every year. Below are the names of just a few who have died in recent months. OSHA's mission is to prevent workplace injuries, illnesses, and death, end quote. That Occupational Safety and Health Administration webpage was intended to highlight and humanize workplace deaths, to ensure awareness of tragedies, especially those that could have been avoided, according to Jordan Barab, an Assistant Secretary of Labor during the Obama administration. Barab explained, without information like this, fatality statistics are just raw, sterile numbers. The purpose of adding names and circumstances was to impress people with the tragedy that workers and their families face day after day. In August 2017, Trump's Labor Department quietly removed the preamble and the names when it killed the web page. It also took down, without public announcement, the fatality inspection data for all years prior to 2017. Those were just two of many other Trump administration actions inimical to worker safety. Others included no longer posting press releases about deaths resulting from unsafe working conditions, delaying rules to reduce sickness and death from inhaling silica and beryllium at work, delaying rules to lower the risk of railroad engineers and truck drivers falling asleep at the switch or wheel because of untreated sleep apnea, and the appointment to the Supreme Court of a judge who held that a company had the right to fire a worker who chose not to freeze to death on the job. A reasonable person listening to Donald Trump's inaugural address would never have expected these and other actions, assuming he believed what Trump said. Trump declared, "The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no more. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens," end quote. Those men and women were forgotten again the following week. And it's not just workers whose interests were forgotten, not to mention who were put in danger. By deciding not to implement a rule to reduce the chances of truck drivers and train operators falling asleep at the wheel, Trump put at risk the lives of families driving along the highway, people riding on passenger trains, and many others. The White House called it President Trump's war on regulation. In his weekly radio address in early May, he declared that we've removed one job-killing regulation after another, and they're not pretty, and they're going. And believe me, we're just getting started on regulations. They're gone. Removal of data on workplace deaths, which averaged 13 per day, infuriated Jordan Barab, who was Obama's number 2 at OSHA. As a private citizen, Barab created a web page to keep track of the names of the dead and the reasons they were killed on the job. He called it, "OSHA won't tell you who died in the workplace, we will." After the election, Barab's concerns that the Trump administration would be bad for workers increased when he asked where the Trump beachhead team was and learned that none was coming. Each incoming administrator sends people to scope out federal agencies, learn who does what, and get a feel for the place in advance. Then the incoming administration sends its landing team, the people who will initially implement its policies, for each agenda. or at each agency. When no beachhead team came up, Barab figured it meant worker safety simply was not a priority for Trump. He hoped that was the worst of it, nothing more than apathy about worker safety. But when the landing team arrived, Barab realized trouble was coming for American workers, and it was not official apathy, but the start of assaults on workers' rights and safety. Barab said most of them had no idea they were going to labor and no interest in workers' issues either. What they did have was a mandate to delay, repeal, or weaken regulations that protected workers as part of Trump's plan to eliminate, quote, any regulation that is outdated, unnecessary, bad for workers, or contrary to the national interest, end quote. The first sign came when Trump nominated Judge Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. Gorsuch was an acolyte of Antonin Scalia, whose seat he would be taking. Like Scalia, he said statutes should be literally read, and if that made no sense, well, that was a problem for Congress. Also like Scalia, he had a habit of consulting dictionaries, often following Scalia's practice of relying on the third, fourth, or even lesser definition of a word when it supported his jurisprudence. Trump's nomination alarmed unions. Jody Calamine, a communications worker of America lawyer, told Gorsuch's Senate confirmation hearing that Gorsuch, quote, is a threat to working people's health and safety, end quote. Calamine cited Gorsuch's dissent in the 2016 case to make this his point. That dissent, he said, reveals an anti-worker bias and features the judicial activism that will ultimately put workers' lives at risk, end quote. Those are unusually strong words about a Supreme Court nominee, but a review of the case shows Gorsuch has little regard for human life, at least when it comes to employers' power over their workers. He considers a rigid interpretation of the law more important. The case was about a law Congress passed giving workers the right to refuse dangerous tasks. Gorsuch said, no, you may not refuse. It's even worse than you think, by David K. Johnston.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
Used to be a man could buy a home, working hard, building life on his own. Now the price tags climb, the rents don't stop, while Wall Street sharks buy up every block. They say it's the market, they say it's fair, but homes weren't meant for hedge funds to share. They buy them up, they drive up the cost, and working folks are the ones getting lost. The real killers of the American dream ain't in the alleys, ain't in your streets, they're in boardrooms, making their bets, turning homes into corporate assets.
35 minutes past the hour. The majority of homes in some states for the first 6 months of this year were purchased not by individuals but by big New York banks, hedge funds, Wall Street investment houses. It's getting really, really bad out there. Meanwhile, as I was telling you, these flight attendants are freaking out on these as they're deporting these immigrants and sometimes beating them, shackling them, treating them like crap. People who came to this country and did the right thing. They surrendered themselves at the border. They said, I want to apply for asylum. They went before a judge. They were given permission to be in the United States. They have documentation. They check in every month with Customs and Border Patrol or with whatever agency it is that they deal with. And now ICE is arresting these people. And now ICE is offering $50,000 signing bonuses. If you too would like to go out and beat people up, smash car windows, and do it with your face completely covered, so you never have, you'll never be accountable for your crimes, the federal government wants to give you $50,000. you too can become part of the Gestapo. Nearly $30 billion was allocated in the big ugly bill for hiring 10,000 more ICE agents. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, at the SFO airport, San Francisco airport, a Texas scientist, this is somebody who has permanent residency in the United States. He has a green card. His name is Tae-Hung Kim. They call him Will. And Will has lived in this country since he was 5 years old. And as I say, he has a green card. And he was flying home from Korea on July 21st. He got stopped at the airport. He was locked in a room. This is from the San Francisco Gate, from the San Francisco, I forget the name of the main paper in San Francisco, but it's sfgate.com is the website. And it says, quote, Lee said in a post, Lee is his attorney, that Kim has been forced to sleep in a chair for more than a week with no access to daylight, and described the situation as another brutal attack on immigrants and scientists. Kim is a PhD candidate at Texas A&M University studying vaccine development. Well, of course, that's his crime, not just having been born outside the United States and merely having a green card. But hey, the guy is a vaccine scientist. We can't have that. Meanwhile, Trump is privately talking about, well, now it's public, I guess, inviting the G20 next year to the Doral, to his seedy golf motel down in Miami. And this is a clear violation of the Emoluments Clause, which says that the president cannot take money from foreign governments. But, hey, Trump doesn't care about the Constitution. He doesn't care about the law. And meanwhile, CBS News has done a deep dive on the Jeffrey Epstein video, on the prison video. And, there's this orange blob. That's the headline over on Drudge. But this is a quote from CBS News. Quote, CBS News Review found the video does little to provide evidence to support claims that were later made by federal officials. Additionally, CBS News has identified multiple inconsistencies between that report and the video that raise serious questions about the accuracy of witness statements and the thoroughness of the government's investigation. Gee, what a surprise. The Trump administration is covering up Jeffrey Epstein's death during the first Trump administration? I'm shocked. I mean, who could have thought, right? They say over the course of the night, the staff on duty failed to conduct the required 30-minute check-ins. Epstein had allegedly tried to kill himself weeks earlier. Because of that, under prison protocol, he was assigned a roommate. But that day, the roommate was transferred out and he was left all alone, and they didn't check on him. And gee, the camera seems to have some holes. The video has some holes in it. And nobody knows what's going on, right? No, they don't. I think they do. I think we all know what happened. Anyway, what's on your mind today? Let's pick up some calls here. Joe in Seattle. Hey, Joe, what's up?
Good morning, Tom. Hey, I just wanted to point out on the ICE officers, when you go to the website, U.S. Jobs, and the qualifications for becoming one of these ICE bully officers is just minimal. And there's no mental evaluation of these people or education of any sort. And I happened to witness this happen in Tacoma, Washington, Parkland area. As we were driving along, there was an unmarked van and unmarked officers, and they threw this elderly lady to the ground. And it was almost like she was being either robbed or molested. And when I called the Tacoma 911 number and was reporting this, they hung up on me. But there was a gentleman that got out of his car and started screaming, and they started pointing weapons at him. And I was afraid of him being shot. But, I want to go back to the indigenous American Indians that were treated the same way, and also the Japanese people during the Second World War. I'm afraid that this is going to turn into a bloodbath eventually. What's your opinion?
I am watching escalating levels of violence on the part of the state. And keep in mind, the state is the only entity that has the legal power to deprive you of your liberty or even your life, much less your possessions. And I'm watching growing levels of violence by the state, and I find it extremely alarming, Joe. What I find particularly alarming is that there isn't a single elected Republican that I know of. I mean, maybe there's one someplace in, West Wazoo, Maine or something, but, certainly at the federal level, who has spoken out about this or has even, other than Lisa Murkowski saying that she's frightened by Trump, nobody is speaking out on the right. And that's exactly what happened in Nazi Germany. It's exactly what happened in Austria. It's exactly what happened in Hungary. It's exactly what happened in Russia. When people on the so-called left, that is the people who want freedom, who want liberty, who believe in civil rights and human rights, they'll speak out and then they get beaten down. But the people on the right, the ones who are fine with authoritarianism and the rich getting richer and the poor getting screwed, they're actually cheering this stuff on. And that's extraordinarily troubling. And the levels of state power that Trump has accumulated and the expansion of these powers with this most recent piece of legislation, the big ugly bill, are truly, truly concerning. This country is on a path. What's the old saying? If you keep going in the direction you're going, you're going to end up. You're going to get where you, whatever. Right? We're heading towards something really, really dark here. And we're frankly in the midst of it, and it concerns me tremendously. Joe, I got to move on. Thanks for the call. Excellent point, and thanks for sharing that story with us. Charles in Miami. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, Tom?
Fine,
my thing is this. This isn't happening to me like in a vacuum. I was listening to Jen Psaki the other night, 2 nights ago, and she was explaining that I guess in the Trump, how he's recycling these same district, what is it, like district attorney, not district attorney, state attorneys or federal attorneys in each different state. And when they come back, because they're not confirmed, they only have like, I guess, 90 days on the job, I think.
Right.
But what
yeah,
he's
as acting, you're talking about replacing U.S. attorneys. Right.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
The federal prosecutors.
And the thing is, and I am completely up in arms right now. I mean, this leadership, this Democratic leadership, man, this is what you call political. It's past political, man. Fusion. I mean, I don't know what else. Listen, this is.
Well, hey, Chuck Schumer's sending strongly worded letters, Charles.
Right, but I realized also. I realized also yesterday something. I picked it up, and I realized that when you don't, as a party, when you don't tell people that they're also invested, that is, that they have not just a stake, but it's really like their government as well. Mm-hmm. They count. They matter. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find the right word. It's still not the right word yet. But when you have people more invested in, and I think the Democratic Party has stopped trying to expand people that this is their government also. Mm-hmm. They're just not taxpayers. This is their country as well. And I just don't think they're doing their job. And they're not getting people totally invested in what's going on, in their government. And I just think that there's just, all of this is why he's getting away with all this stuff too.
Oh yeah, and, most people just, they just want to go to work and raise their families and go to the park and go out to dinner, and they just don't want to be, and that's how these guys get away with this stuff. Charles, thank you so much for the call. Always nice hearing from you. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
'Tis 45 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Stay with us. And welcome back. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Michael, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. Listen, I think CBS must ask the FBI and the CIA for two things. One, we need the full tape. Now, not just for the reasons you said, because they're clearly very skilled, but I'd like them to also reach out to the IEEE to do a Fourier analysis of the actual shadows that are cast, like on the wall and in the room. That can be analyzed, and you can know the timing when someone goes down those stairs. And with that timing, potentially,
well, apparently the camera that actually would have shot his cell wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So all we have is the camera that shot the corridor leading to his cell.
No, I'm not speaking clear. I'm sorry. That video of the room without direct vision of
I don't know how this
happens. Anything moving within that room, you can analyze those shadows doing something called Fourier analysis. And that's why I say they need to approach, CBS people know what I'm talking about. They can approach the IEEE. And the second thing is, CBS, please use AI to analyze President Trump's speech and that of all of the presidents to produce their relative IQs, and if there's been any declines medically. No, you laugh.
No, I totally get it. And,
this is a real thing.
I agree.
Both of these are real things.
I agree. He's increasingly speaking in word salad. I get it. But I also don't think that Trump is suffering dementia. I think he's experiencing normal age-related mental decline.
I think he's always been low IQ.
Oh, I agree with that.
Low average IQ. I don't think we really faced that.
Yeah,
and that's our attraction to him as well.
Yeah, he likes stupid people like him. No, I get it. Michael, thank you very much. Chris in Littleton, Colorado. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Yeah, good morning, Tom. I want to tell everyone to call your senators to support the Visible Act, sponsored by Padilla and Booker.
And that's the law that says that they can't wear masks anymore, ICE?
Yeah, I think it says they can't wear masks, and also they have to obey the laws, I think.
Right,
I don't know
and they have to show their they have to show their badges or their identity or their something. They have to be identifiable. Yeah.
Yeah, they should. Everybody should call and support that. And then second thing is we all need to vote in big numbers in the midterm election and elect people that believe in human rights and democracy. And if we do that, they can those people that we elect can change ICE's mission to an immigration solution and health center that upholds human rights. And they can hire a lot of immigration judges with all that.
They just fired a bunch of immigration judges. They're trying to reduce the capacity to allow people to stay in this country, at least people with brown skin.
But if we get the majority of good politicians that believe in doing something about the immigration problem and respect human rights and all that, they can change that. They can change ICE's mission.
They could, but I would argue that ICE's mission is being distorted by Trump himself. I mean, ultimately, we're going to have to get back the White House. That's the problem right now. But I get your point, Chris. Chris, thank you for the call. It's just about 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be in a few seconds. I'll be back with you in 1 minute. Stay with us. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. People in the Rust Belt states know all about
Welcome back.
Tariffs.
It is
10 minutes before the hour. Tracy in Fayetteville, Georgia. Hey, Tracy, what's on your mind today? Do we have Tracy potted up? Everything is good? Okay. Let me put Tracy on hold and we'll try somebody else. Kenyatta in Los Angeles. Hey, Kenyatta, what's on your mind today?
Well, listen, I want to keep my powder dry on what I really wanted to call about, but if I suddenly, disappear or something, know that we are in the middle of something I've never seen. I was born and raised for 6 decades in Southern California, and we are in the middle of something here like an earthquake swarm. They started at, we had a 3.0 at 8:34. 10 minutes later, we went down to a 2.8, which one could say was an aftershock. but then an hour after that, it went back up to a 3.1, and we just had a 4.3. That's what they're saying preliminarily. But I got to tell you something, that thing was violent. If
You're
it's a
feeling
4.3,
yeah,
it was probably shallow. And here's the weird thing, kind of borrowing your term, geeky science. When this I've never experienced this before, and I've lived through Silmar earthquakes, Northridge earthquake. I mean, big ones, but they're all different depending on where they happen in the ground.
Sure.
And having had so many in such a succession, and I don't know if this has anything to do with the Russian earthquake or whatever, you end up feeling like the Earth is still moving even when it's not, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because your equilibrium is thrown off.
Right.
So if I suddenly, like I said, USGS is saying it was a 4.3. I ain't quite buying it, and those things have preliminarily changed. But I got to tell you, it was pretty intense, and it's been going on all morning. And what's weird is they're increasing in terms of power. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about is. You mentioned, and of course, I read your newsletter religiously, literally. You talked about a ProPublica report titled "Bloodied Faces," and obviously you're the author, so you know what they reported. Documenting massive use of physical force, car windows smashed, people beaten up by masked anonymous ICE thugs, and the reporters call this level of police brutality unprecedented, pointing out that no police agency had ever behaved like this prior to the Trump administration. Tom, I'm sorry, I've got to push back a little bit here. Police agencies in the United States were formed by something called slave patrols for people like me.
Yeah, I said in the modern history, but even at that, what specifically ProPublica was talking about was the smashing of car windows. That's something that we just have not seen in.
Well, maybe you have.
At 50 incidents that they've been able to document with video, meaning there's probably hundreds of them, just in the last month or two.
Tom, we have had situations where our children have had, wait a minute, flashbang grenades thrown through windows, maiming children.
Oh, I know that. Bombed entire city blocks in Pennsylvania. Blowing children up. But although that wasn't the police.
I didn't call to argue with you, Tom. I just wanted to know if you knew what metrics they were using. That's really my question.
The specific thing that they were identifying as new was smashing car windows. This is something that, just is not a common practice in policing in the United States. It's very, very
okay.
rare.
Well, damn, I guess Trayvon Martin would have rather had his car window smashed. So would Breonna Taylor. So would Ahmaud Arbery.
Well, they'd all still be alive.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right, listen, I didn't call to be a smart.
No, and I'm not trying to make some kind of false equivalence or argue against same. What I'm saying is that ICE is now engaging in, without warrants, in a physical level of violence, smashing open car windows that is new and unprecidented. And that doesn't in any way diminish the violence against black people in this country over the last 5 years.
No. It's all bad, and this is now this is thuggery. Yeah, that's out in the open, and it's no longer limited to just us. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, and the thing that is freaking me out or pissing me off, or I don't know what the right phrase is that this is being celebrated by people on the right. It's being celebrated by Republican politicians. It's being celebrated, over on Fox News and across right-wing media, and that's, it's like back in the 20s when they, during the Wilson administration and later, when they were celebrating the violence of the Klan. It's
Tom. That's why. That's why these people put Smitty in office.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, I get it. He is not. You've heard me say this a million times. He is not the disease. He is a symptom. Absolutely. That's why I said when he came down, I wrote this in the article today, when he came down that escalator and started talking about Mexican rapists and murderers, we should have known. You know, we thought it was hyperbole. It wasn't. This was the announcement of a new era of political and legal violence in the United States.
Absolutely.
And you know, obviously they're building on the old era of political and legal violence in the United States, which has not gone away, but they're amplifying it so rapidly now, and with the apparent approval of the majority of white people in this country. And
well, you know what? You said it.
Yeah. Hey, it's there. It is true. Kenyatta, thank you for the call. Keep up the great writing over on Substack. Keep up the great work. Good talking.
Yes, sir. You too.
You bet. Thank you.
Bye.
Back at you. We'll be back on the other side of the break with Phil Ittner, the live update from Ukraine, and a little bit more of the news of the day and your calls. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today, we're reading about Thunderdome politics, an uncivil war taking back our democracy in an age of Trumpian disinformation and Thunderdome politics by Greg Sargent, the Washington Post columnist. This is from his chapter on voter suppression. It's page 37. Republicans and Democrats inhabit different political realities, as mentioned in a previous chapter. But there are certain facts about our politics that are just objectively true. One of them is this. Generally speaking, efforts to make it harder to vote are almost always pushed by Republicans. You cannot understand what is happening in American politics right now without recognizing this stark and very fundamental difference between the two major political parties. During this decade, procedural hurdles were put into place in around 20 states that in some manner or other have made it harder to vote or to register to vote, or have undone previous efforts to make voting or registering easier, or have otherwise threatened serious disenfranchisement. Most of them were the creation of Republican lawmakers and officials. The difference in the two parties' national platforms for 2016 tells the story. The GOP platform champions additional hurdles that are absurdly disproportionate to the phantom abuse it alleges, while the Democratic platform champions multiple specific ways to make it easier to vote, not harder. The most common and controversial of methods used by Republicans to suppress Democratic turnout is the requirement that would-be voters present identification at the polls. The game here tends to turn on requiring forms of ID that some groups are less likely to have, making participation harder for them. Other restrictions include techniques like cutting back on early voting and making it harder to register, both of which have, in recent years, been instituted in multiple states. Republicans who have passed laws making it harder to vote have tended to claim such measures are necessary to protect against, quote, voter fraud. We'll look at this in more detail below, but for now, note that most of the states that have passed such measures did so while under Republican control. As New York University political scientist Samuel Isikoff has memorably put it, the single predictor necessary to determine whether a state will impose voter access restrictions is whether Republicans control the ballot access process. Scholars trace the modern era of warfare over election rules to the intensely contested presidential election of 2000, in which a divided Supreme Court halted the recount in Florida, throwing the presidency to George W. Bush. The closeness and partisan acrimony of that contest, combined with the intense national focus on election rules that accompanied the court battle over it, helped persuade both parties to invest much more attention and energy on those rules. As a result, both the implementation of measures restricting the ballot and the legal battles over them have intensified in recent years. A brief glance at the surprising history of voter ID laws begins to tell the story of this tightening. In the 1970s, several states implemented voter ID measures, but all of them provided for ways that voters without the proper ID could cast a ballot. By 2000, there were 14 such laws, and they had been implemented by politicians in both parties. But by the mid-2000s, amid rising post-2000 acrimony, a handful of red states began implementing voter ID laws that the nonpartisan National Conference of State Legislatures described as, quote, strict, meaning that they make it easy to disqualify those who don't pass muster. After one of those laws in Indiana was challenged and then upheld in 2008 by the Supreme Court, an escalation began that gained momentum in the Obama era. From 2010 onward, the adoption of voter ID laws in general, and of strict ones in particular, accelerated. Though a handful were blocked in the courts, as of this writing, a total of 34 states have voter ID laws in effect, 24 that are deemed non-strict and 10 that are deemed strict. The strict ones are in red states or in swing states where they were implemented by Republicans. The story is very similar if you evaluate the state's voting rules in a broader way, by including not just voter ID measures, but also cutbacks to early voting and restrictions on registration. Here the trend is just as pronounced. After the 2010 elections, the Brennan Center for Justice documented a sharp rise in efforts to pass such measures in the state legislatures across the country. Not all these efforts bore fruit, but many did. By the time voting took place in Election Day 2016, some 14 states had these new restrictions in place for the first time in a presidential election. Now, as of this writing, by the Brennan Center's count, some 20 states have successfully implemented either strict voting ID requirements or cutbacks to early voting or restrictions on registration or other measures with meaningful disenfranchising effects. If you're a liberal who's frustrated by the seemingly unbreakable Republican dominance of national politics, not to mention GOP control of most state governments across the country, then the chances are that these restrictions figure heavily into your explanation of this GOP supremacy. Indeed, social media has been absolutely saturated in recent years with variations of the lament that Republican political dominance is largely maintained through a combination of nefarious and undemocratic tactics, such as ballot restrictions that keep constituencies unfriendly to the GOP from voting, and extreme gerrymanders that have, in effect, built a fortress around the GOP's majority in the House of Representatives. Democrats frequently invoke the GOP's use of these tactics, often justifiably, to raise money and to galvanize turnout. This narrative contains some important truths. Some of the forms that these restrictions on voting access have taken in recent years are diabolically obvious in their efforts to keep constituencies supportive of Democrats from voting. Still others boast the distinction of being more insidiously designed and thus less obvious in their intentions. The book is An Uncivil War by Greg Sargent of The Washington Post.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. On the line with us, Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent based out of Kyiv, Ukraine, host of the podcast On the Edge. You can also find his video blog over on YouTube. Just look for Philip Ittner, Philipittner. Ittner Philip, backwards, his last name, first name, is his Blue Sky handle as well as his Twitter handle. Phil, welcome back to the program. How are you? How's Ukraine? How's Kyiv?
Real shellacking last night. The Russians using a wide range of drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles. Several got through the air defense here, and last time I checked, we have 11 dead, including a 6-year-old child. I think there's 153 who were wounded. It was a rough night. It was, a lot of anti-aircraft going up into the skies, which, of course, their purpose is to terrorize the people of this city, the people of this country, but also to exhaust us. And I have to admit, that aspect is working. We have gone many days in the last month, many sleepless nights, because, of course, it's just unbearable to try and sleep through that. And even if you are successful in sleeping through it, I don't know how good that is either, that we become so inured to it that we sleep through it. But, you can see it on the streets. You can feel it in the mood among the people. There's a lot of exhaustion, and that's Moscow's intent, is to wear down the people's will to resist them, but also to just wear them down, full stop. And that, I have to say, is finding some ground. It's working now. Militarily, they're not doing too great. Out in the east of the Russians are not doing too great. Out in the east of the country, they're kind of grinding through a couple of different fronts. And they're losing a lot of men as they do it, but they are making slow, sure, steady increases in territory. But at this rate, it's going to take them, at least another year, and goodness knows how many more casualties before they even get to a large metropolitan center, an urban center. They're fighting over towns that are built for 60 to 70,000 people, and they are losing tens of thousands of soldiers for these little podunk, strategically not important towns. And it is widely thought that their intent is to grab the entire section of the east of the country called the Donbass, and then we'll see. Does Putin then, say that's a good enough victory? I can take this home and sell this to the Russian people as having been a worthwhile effort. That is highly questionable, because it's not. Grabbing the Donbass is not worth over 1 million casualties, which is they've already crossed that line. Yeah. Additionally, they're worried about soldiers coming back, because they're coming back to a country that is economically in hard straits and is set on a war industry footing, and so they're going to go back to their little villages, and they're not going to be getting jobs. The huge pay that they have been getting as soldiers will come to a close, and so in many ways the Kremlin is afraid of its own returning troops. All of this means that, sadly, it looks like this war is going to keep going.
I'm curious your take on the U.S.-Russian political side of this. Trump, a couple of days ago, maybe it was yesterday, I think it was the day before yesterday, said that I'm going to shorten up that 50-day time period that I gave Russia to do their best to destroy Ukraine. And Dmitry Medvedev, who took turns with Putin as president of Ukraine, and is kind of his attack dog now, said Trump should remember two things. One, Russia isn't Israel or even Iran. And two, each new ultimatum is a threat and a step toward war. not between Russia and Ukraine, but with his own country. In other words, between Russia and the United States. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road. And then that Sleepy Joe comment caused Trump to freak out, and he replied saying, Russia and the U.S. do almost no business together. Let's keep it that way and tell Medvedev, the failed former president of Russia who thinks he's still president, to watch his words. He's entering very dangerous territory. As far as I can tell, and then Medvedev, hits back. Trump issued a theatrical ultimatum to the Kremlin. The world shuddered, expecting the consequences. Belligerent Europe was disappointed. Russia doesn't care. It seems to me like this is entirely rhetorical. If Donald Trump is still not sending weaponry to Ukraine, then what the hell is all this about? Is this just performance art so that we don't realize that Trump is in Putin's pocket?
That's as good as an explanation as I can think of. But, a lot of this is performative, clearly performative. And Medvedev is well known for that as well. It takes two to tango. He is just as, kind of loudmouthed and bellicose as Trump himself. So I could easily see those two getting into it again. As far as changing this deadline that he had of 50 days down to 10 days, well, okay, but again, what happens at 10 days? He's made these kind of like, we're going to sanction them or we're going to tariff them. Well, we've already isolated Russia in so many different ways with their economy. What more exactly is it that you intend to do? And you're right, Tom. What we really need is weapons. We need air defense. Primarily, we need air defense, and we need it badly. We need better armor, like the Bradleys, that we have tons just sitting in stockpiles. If the Europeans have to pay for it because of Trump's transactional nature, then so be it. But we don't need more words. We need weapons. And as far as like more sanctions and tariffs, well, I mean, I don't know what more could be done. I mean, you could really shut down the oil trade, but the Europeans are already doing that with Russia's so-called shadow fleet, which is still trading out there. Trump has not articulated exactly what it is he intends to do.
No, he was muttering the other day about India is still buying Russian oil, and then what are you going to do about it? Well, nothing, of course.
Yeah, and then the problem that then creates is the same problem that President Obama had with the red lines thing in Syria, and then the red line gets crossed, and if you don't do anything, then the next time you issue a kind of a red line, who's gonna pay attention to it? So Trump will have to do something at this 10-day deadline, but goodness knows what. And if it's not a massive influx of weapons or money, send us money, and the Ukrainians will buy the weapons. But this ambiguous kind of like, you're going to get it if you don't go to the peace table within 10 days. You're not going to like what I'm going to do. Well, okay. Well,
they figured out that he's a taco in regard to this as much as he is in regard to with his tariff wars.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. They don't take him seriously.
Yeah.
Putin runs laps around him. I mean, even as I say, Medvedev is not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. It's just that he can be as belligerent as Trump, so they can have their little Twitter fight. But we need concrete moves. We need a strategy. We need a stated, Putin, if you do not come to the table or if you do not issue a ceasefire, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then follow through. But this kind of ambiguous language and this kind of like, again, this kind of these empty threats or threats that appear, unless he carries through with them, they're going to be empty threats. And then where are we? You cannot do this with the Russians.
Yeah.
The Russians will keep taking and keep taking if you let them.
Are you seeing, real quickly, are you seeing European weaponry showing up?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're constantly getting weapons from the Europeans.
Yeah.
There's an air defense system that they desperately need that's been promised by the Europeans, and only about half of them have showed up. So we need more of those, and we need them right now. So, yeah, it's tough going here right now. But nobody is talking, let me reassure you, nobody's talking about defeat.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. The great Phil Ittner. Phil, thank you so much.
Thanks.
And welcome back. Bob in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hey, Bob, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Wow. After following now with Phil Ittner, I just wish I could do a magic wand and just change the current occupant of the White House and help our good friends, the Ukrainians, and all the folks in Gaza.
Or the current occupant of the Kremlin, too.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, so that's a reality check. Well, I wanted to kind of give you an updated, a success story from your kind of like a tag on yesterday from your dementia research. A good story and a one where things didn't work out as well, and also just a request that and I've asked my local Democratic congressperson, could they come back early and take over the House, the chamber, and do their own shadow government? Not shadow, just docket. Say, hey, this is what the MAGA murder bill did. This is what we're going to do. This is what they did. This is what we're going to do, and just basically hold a session without them. I don't know if they can get in there or just do something along that line. If you had a chance.
Who's the they that you're talking about here?
The House of Representative Democrats and the Senate as well.
They cannot hold a session without the authorization of Mike Johnson.
That's what I thought. Or if they could find some place they could do it, along that same line. But that's what I thought. But, okay. Well, getting back to the...
by the way, that's why I've been calling for them to create a shadow cabinet, and do some performance art here. But, that seems to be beyond the ability of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer.
I keep haranguing my people, too. So we're great minds think alike. So I'm not going to quit. But going back to the dementia aspect of people coming back, my sister-in-law, unfortunately, on a downside, she passed away last year from dementia about 5 years before she'd been diagnosed. I have a coworker, though, who had been exhibiting symptoms of dementia and actually has come back. He stopped and has come back. He's regaining functionality. And this was after listening to the work of Dr. Dale Bredesen. He's out in California. He's a neurologist, and he actually came up with a protocol basically 5 years ago. So I heard about this. My wife, Linda, and I, this is before, we were coming back, and we heard on a radio station here, WNC, or the People's Pharmacy, they had Dr. Bredesen on there. He described his protocol, but he also had on there one of his patients who had come back, and she was actually, her name was Sally Weinrich. She'd actually come back. She had been a PhD nurse. She'd worked in a memory unit. She had members of her own family that had died from dementia, and she herself was exhibiting the same symptoms, and it scared, to put it frankly, it scared the hell out of her. And then she said, well, am I sliding into oblivion? Well, between one false start and another, she followed his protocol, and in essence, I can break it down to 5 things.
What was the protocol?
Basically, 5 things. One is, if you've been exposed to any toxic exposure, for her, it was mold. She didn't realize in her house she had black mold. Okay. But cadmium, lead. Second thing, go ahead.
No, I just have 5 seconds left. I need you to speed up.
Okay, so the next thing would then be hormones. Next thing would be diet, exercise, mental activity, and then being part of some bigger community.
Well, that's the essence of what this research that Dean Ornish was doing, with a vegan diet and some supplements and daily aerobic exercise. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that story. I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. It's 21 minutes past the hour. See you in a minute. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. They called it blood libel, what the Germans were doing against the Jews, claiming that they were using the blood of Christian children to make their matzah. We've got a new blood libel now here in the United States. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump lying through their teeth, arguing that black Haitian immigrants to the United States, legal immigrants with green cards in this little town in Ohio, are eating pets. This is another libel that goes way back. In the 1890s, people were claiming German and Dutch immigrants were eating pets. Then they claimed in the 1880s, and actually as recently as last year, a restaurant got shut down in California because of claims that they were serving pets. They weren't. But it was an Asian restaurant. This is just evil stuff, these lies and spreading this kind of hate. And this is now the strategy that the Republicans are using. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com, Hate as a Political Weapon. Check it out.
They came for Ukraine in the dead of night. A sovereign land lit by freedom's light. Sirens wailed as the skies turned red, but Ukraine stood while the cowards fled. Homes were shattered, dreams set ablaze, yet through the smoke the blue and yellow sways. A mother clings to a photograph. Ukraine still breathes, Ukraine still lasts. Ukraine is not alone in this, their cry for peace the world must kiss. Democracy's not just a word, it's every voice that must be heard. From city square to bloodstained field, they hold the line, they will not yield. Their fight is ours, this truth is known. We stand with Ukraine, they're not alone.
Welcome back. So the key inflation rate has gone up. We are seeing, first of all, job cuts surged 140% from a year ago, July, so yikes. The core PCE price index went up more than expected. It's up to 2.79%, basically 2.8% inflation right now. And Procter & Gamble said on Tuesday they're going to raise prices on some products sold in the U.S. Because of tariffs. P&G, Procter & Gamble, they're talking about Charmin toilet paper, Dawn dish soap, Tide Evo laundry detergent. They're trying to offset $1 billion in tariff costs that Procter & Gamble is paying. Keep in mind, other countries don't pay tariffs. We do. And Adidas is raising prices. They've confirmed that they will raise prices for American customers. Its rival Nike also said that they would raise prices on some clothing and later warned that their tariffs are costing them about $1 billion as well. So this is pretty grim stuff, basically. And on it goes. Meanwhile, there's a new threat to Social Security. This is pretty nutso. Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, multi-billionaire Scott Bessent, said he was talking at an investment conference, and he said, and I quote, well, first of all, he's talking about these accounts that I believe are in the big ugly bill, that every child gets $1,000 when they're born, and then, or $600 or whatever it is, and then you can add money to that account. Maybe you can add $1,000 a year or something like that as time goes on. Now, interestingly, this was an idea that was suggested by Thomas Paine in his booklet Agrarian Justice back in the 1790s. And he suggested basically this as a Social Security program. That the government, when every child is born, that the government fund a retirement account for that child, and that be invested in the stock market, and over time that will grow. It's not a terrible idea, but the thing is, Bessent said, and I'll just quote him. He said, I'm not sure when the distribution level date should be. In other words, when you have access to that money, or when the child does. He says whether it should be 30 and you can buy a house or whether it should be 60. But in a way, it is a backdoor for privatizing Social Security. So here we, end of quote. So here we have the Treasury Secretary of the United States, this multi-billionaire, in the Trump cabinet, overseeing our Treasury Department. He's got Alexander Hamilton's old job, and he's saying, this is the first step toward privatizing Social Security. Now, today he's out there going, well, I didn't mean privatize Social Security. I just said privatize. Yeah, I didn't. Well, we're not. Social Security's good. We're not going to. I think he realizes he put his foot in his mouth. I mean, Republicans aren't supposed to say out loud what they're really doing. And Besson is getting he's not a politician. He's getting a fast course on how to lie, how to be an effective Republican politician. It's amazing. But get ready. Hang on.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Social Security's been in their crosshairs ever since 1935 when it was passed into law. Republicans have been trying to tear it down. Your calls are up next. Stay with us. Today we're reading from Elon Papp's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. This is from the preface. It's titled The Red House. The Red House was a typical early Tel Avivian building, the pride of the Jewish builders and craftsmen who toiled over in the 1920s. It had been designed to house the head office of the local Workers' Council. It remained such until toward the end of 1947 it became the headquarters of the Haganah, the main Zionist underground militia in Palestine. Located near the sea on Yarkon Street in the northern part of Tel Aviv, the building formed another fine addition to the first Hebrew city on the Mediterranean, the White City, as its literati and pundits affectionately called it. For in those days, unlike today, the immaculate whiteness of his houses still bathed the town as a whole in the opulent brightness so typical of Mediterranean port cities of that era and that region. It was a sight for sore eyes, elegantly fusing Bauhaus motifs with native Palestinian architecture in an admixture that was called Levantine in the least derogatory sense of the term. Such too was the Red House, its simple rectangular features graced with frontal arches that framed the entrance and supported the balconies of its two upper stories. It was either its association with the workers' movement that had inspired the adjective red, or its pinkish tinge that it acquired during sunset that had given the house its name. The former was more fitting as the building continued to be associated with the Zionist version of socialism when, in the 1970s, it became the main office for Israel's kibbutzim movement. Houses like this, important historical remnants of the mandatory period, prompted UNESCO in 2003 to designate Tel Aviv as a World Heritage Site. Today, the house is no longer there, a victim of development, which has razed this architectural relic to the ground to make room for a car park next to the new Sheraton Hotel. Thus, in this street, too, no traces left of the White City, which it has slowly transmogrified into the sprawling, polluted, extravagant metropolis that is the modern Tel Aviv. In this building on a cold Wednesday afternoon, 10 March 1948, a group of 11 men, veteran Zionist leaders, together with young military Jewish officers, put the final touches on a plan for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. That same evening, military orders were dispatched to the units on the ground to prepare for the systematic expulsion of Palestinians from vast areas of the country. The orders came from a detailed description of the methods to be employed to forcibly evict the people: large-scale intimidation, laying siege to and bombarding villages and population centers, setting fire to homes, properties, goods, expulsion, demolition, and finally planting mines among the rubble to prevent any of the expelled inhabitants from returning. Each unit was issued with its own list of villages and neighborhoods as the targets of the master plan. Codenamed Plan D, Dalet in Hebrew, this was the fourth and final version of less substantial plans that outlined the fate the Zionists had in store for Palestine and consequently for its native population. The previous three schemes had articulated only obscurely how the Zionist leadership contemplated dealing with the presence of so many Palestinians living in the land that the Jewish national movement coveted as its own. This fourth and last blueprint spelled it out clearly and unambiguously. Quote, "The Palestinians have to go," end quote. In the words of one of the first historians to note the significance of that plan, Simcha Flapan, the military campaign against the Arabs, including the conquest and destruction of the rural areas, was set forth in the Haganah's plan to let. The aim for the plan was, in fact, the destruction of both the rural and urban areas of Palestine. As the first chapters of this book will attempt to show, this plan was both the inevitable product of the Zionist ideological impulse to have an exclusively Jewish presence in Palestine, and a response to developments on the ground once the British cabinet had decided to end the mandate. Clashes with local Palestinian militias provided the perfect context and pretext for implementing the ideological vision of an ethnically cleansed Palestine. The Zionist policy was first based on retaliation against Palestinian attacks in February of 1947, and it transformed into an initiative to ethnically cleanse the country as a whole in March of 1948. Once the decision was taken, it took 6 months to complete the mission. When it was over, more than half of Palestine's native population, close to 800,000 people, had been uprooted. 531 villages had been destroyed, and 11 urban neighborhoods had been emptied of their inhabitants. The plan decided upon on 10 March 1948, and above all its systematic implementation in the following months, was a clear-cut case of ethnic cleansing operation regarded under international law today as a crime against humanity. After the Holocaust, it has become impossible to conceal large-scale crimes against humanity. Our modern communication-driven world, especially since the upsurge of electronic media, no longer allows human-made catastrophes to remain hidden from the public eye or to be denied. And yet one such crime has been erased almost totally from the global public memory: the disposition of the Palestinians in 1948 by Israel. This, the most formative element in the modern history of the land of Palestine, has ever since been systematically denied and is still today not recognized as an historical fact, let alone acknowledged as a crime that needs to be confronted politically as well as morally. Ethnic cleansing is a crime against humanity, and the people who perpetrate it today are considered criminals to be brought before special tribunals. It may be difficult to decide how one ought to refer to or deal with in the legal sphere those who initiated and perpetrated ethnic cleansing in Palestine in 1948, but it's impossible to reconstruct their crimes. Anyhow, it continues the ethnic cleansing of Palestine.
Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. It's the shocking truth about hairdryer economics and climate change. Donald Trump recently came out with this just absolutely absurd statement. He said, "They want everybody to have an electric car. We don't have enough electricity. We couldn't make enough electricity for that." Well, let's just look at the facts. Charging your electric car with the charger that typically comes with it, you plug it into a 110-volt outlet, pulls about 10 amps. That's about the same as a hairdryer. So if everybody in America just ran a hairdryer for a couple of hours every night, or anytime during the day, do you think that that's going to bring down the power grid? No, this is absurd. It's also why it only costs, running an electric car, powering an electric car is about the equivalent of $1 a gallon gasoline. Obviously it depends on the car. But there's a whole great rant with all the details and charts and graphs and everything else. It's over at HartmannReport.com. It's called The Shocking Point About Hairdryer Economics and Climate Change. Check it out.
And he didn't just break it, he blew it apart. Like Chernobyl in a business suit, no conscience, no heart. Poisoned the truth, made cruelty a trend, taught the GOP that empathy's pretend. He caged up children and laughed at their cries, called Nazis fine people and swallowed his lies. Tore up the map, set fire to the ground, and danced with the devil as the world spun around. He's a black hole in a red hat, a gravity well of hate, spray tan and sulfur, marching toward our fate. He didn't just bring darkness, he built it by design. Now it's show up or shut up, this democracy's on the line.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome back.
Thom Hartmann here with you. Let's pick up some of your calls. Paul in Zillow, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind?
Good morning. Good morning, Tom. I heard you say you weren't aware of any big protest things coming up, but there is a rage against the regime. I don't know if it's nationwide. I'm out in the farm in the vineyard right now and can't look it up. But certainly here in Washington State, every town of any size, including some little ones like Zillow, because we're going to do one here, is having a protest on Saturday, August 2nd, under the banner of Rage Against the Regime.
Cool. Okay. Well, who's organizing this?
Well, it's under a bunch of different things.
Is there a website I could go to find out about it, for example?
Probably. Like I said, I'm out in the field and can't look anything up right now. But I follow 50501 Washington State on Facebook. And on their events page, there's a lot of stuff going on. Here in red Eastern Washington, there's Spokane, Richland, Yakima, Zillow, and I don't know who all else.
Cool.
So I'm pretty sure that 95% of the population of Washington State is within an hour of a demonstration.
That's great. And it's probably the case all over the country.
I think it's fairly nationwide, but like I said, I'm not in the position right now this morning to look it up. So I believe you'll probably find it on some of those sites like The Blop and Indivisible.
Yeah, you're right. I will do it. Paul, thank you. Thanks for the heads up.
You bet.
Yep. Keep growing that great wine. Tracy in Fayetteville, Georgia. Hey, Tracy, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I was watching the news yesterday, and they were talking about the gerrymandering. And I got extremely upset when Nancy Pelosi got on there to respond to it, because while they're doing their gerrymandering, she was talking about in order for California to do it, they had to have a committee, they had to do this and do that. And Democrats are not going to learn. I mean, Republicans have moved forward, and there is no constitutional value. They don't listen to the Constitution. Illegal activities are occurring, and they want to fight that with following the Constitution. I just don't get it.
I get it. Well, here's the problem, Tracy. The state of California actually passed a law, and I'm not sure if they amended their Constitution or whether it was a piece of legislation. I believe it's just a piece of legislation, but they passed a law that created a nonpartisan commission of professional statisticians and bureaucrats whose job was to apportion or redistrict the state. And so now, the state is fairly organized in a fair fashion that gives, representation to Republicans in areas where they're majority and Democrats in the areas where they're a majority. And to gerrymander the state, you would have to break the law. You would have to violate that law. So the state legislature has to get together and either change that law, or the governor has to do something to overcome it or override it, declare a state of emergency or something. I don't know what. But that's what Nancy Pelosi was talking about. And it is a significant legal obstacle. They can't just do it. Like in Texas, there is no law that says that you've got to have fair districts, so they can just do whatever they want. But California adopted this back, 20 or more years ago, and they were quite proud of it at the time. I remember when it happened, maybe even 30 years ago, it's going to be a challenge. But it seems increasingly like Governor Newsom, and a few of the other blue state Democratic controlled states governors are saying, if Texas goes ahead with this, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fight fire with fire, and that's a good thing. So step by step. Tracy, thanks for the call. Eric in Rockville, Maryland. Excuse me. Eric, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How are you doing? Love your show.
Thank you.
I'm really concerned about the Democrats, and I know you brought up concerns with them in the past couple of weeks and stuff, and I just feel that they're not on par where Trump and his administration are at. And I feel like they're falling into the same kind of trap. And they keep attacking Trump, and we know what Trump is. We know what he's doing. We know he's fascist and stuff. But they're not in my view, my opinion, they're not planning for the future like they should be. And I feel like they should be planning that this man is trying to destroy the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the plan after that? They have Project 2025. What is our plan? And they have no leader. They're kind of like floating around and bickering and caught up in the Epstein stuff. And I get it. He's awful. We know what he is. He's been charged for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what's going to happen afterwards? Because we got to start planning. He's not going to leave in 2028. And if he does leave, he's going to give it to Eric Trump.
Yeah.
So that's what we're dealing with. We know what it is. So I just feel like there's no plan. And if you look at the past, there's plans out there. I mean, they can take stuff from FDR's New Deal or Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition.
Or Bernie's
programs.
proposals.
I mean, or Bernie's proposals, yes. And they have to start cultivating and uniting around a leader.
Yeah.
And start planning now.
The problem is that the damage that Bill Clinton did to the Democratic Party in '93 when he created this third way, the new Democratic coalition, which was basically saying we're going to be Republican light. And I get it that at the time, Rush Limbaugh was suddenly becoming very, very popular. Newt Gingrich took over Congress. Fox News was rolling out. I mean, all kinds of stuff was going on that was pushing Clinton in that direction. I'm not saying that he stabbed us in the back, but the bottom line was he created basically this massive fissure in the Democratic Party, and it took a long time. I mean, I remember I did a fundraiser for the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which Bernie started, by the way, when he was in the House of Representatives. And I did a fundraiser for them with Raul Grijalva, who at the time was the chairman. He's now passed away. And it was down I believe it was in New Mexico, might have been Arizona. It was somewhere in the Southwest. And it was a national fundraiser. And at that time, there was about a dozen members. There were only a dozen members of Congress who were members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It was a really small event. I mean, fewer than 200 people even showed up. It was in the early years. Now, more than half of the Democrats, or in the neighborhood of half of the Democrats in Congress, are members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. So we're trying, the party is slowly, sadly, but slowly getting back to its LBJ, FDR, New Deal, Great Society roots. And, it's being impeded, of course, by these so-called problem solver Democrats, who are the ones who are, they allow billionaires to put their hands in their pockets, or vice versa, and are on the corporate dole, the Gottheimers and Goldens of the world. Right. But it's a struggle, Eric. It really is.
Yeah, and I just like to say I just worry about it because I see a severe recession coming.
Yeah.
And they're not ready. And
I see a crisis coming, not just a recession. And I think it's going to be driven by housing right now.
Yeah, the housing asset, and and it could be a depression. I mean, we're second Great Depression coming. I mean, and we have to start planning now. Yeah. I mean, Trump ran in 2022. He started his campaign in 2022. Then they have to unite around that individual. And I don't care if it's Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or whoever. They have to start getting it together now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And I'm hopeful that it's a progressive populist, because I'm still convinced that in 2016 and 2020, Bernie Sanders could have beat Donald Trump. And the big mistake the Democratic Party made was pushing the old Clinton establishment. Eric, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. I'll be right back with your call. And welcome back. Michelle in Scotts Valley, California. Hey, Michelle, what's on your mind today?
Hi. I'm worried about the homeless and mentally ill people being swept up in all this. it's been all over the news, and the Project 2025 bill is, and homelessness and mental health stuff.
Yeah, they want to start building mental institutions around the country and then involuntarily committing people to them. And my concern about that, I realize there's a need for involuntary commitment with some people who are severely mentally ill, and it's better than, letting them go down the road where they end up committing crimes and prison becomes their mental health treatment. But I'm also concerned that this administration will use mental health or mental illness as an excuse to lock up their political enemies. There's something that is happening in Russia right now as we speak. And
wow.
So, yeah, and this was Trump's executive order just a week or two ago, was, to end homelessness, we need to be able to just grab people and stick them in the loony bin if they think that they're if we say that they're mentally ill. And then you've got, Mark Levin, who wrote a book, I'm pretty sure it was Mark Levin, who wrote a book called Liberalism is a Mental Illness. It might have been Michael Savage, one of those guys, And they're very serious about this. They think that liberals are mentally ill.
Yeah. This whole thing has turned me into a liberal.
Yeah,
hardcore.
There you go, Michelle. There you go. Michelle, thank you for the call. I've got to move along, but thank you very much. Pete in Indian Wells, California. Hey, Pete, what's up?
Well, I'm on the same subject, Tom. I'm troubled by this bill or edict, whatever he did, about homelessness.
Yeah, it was an EO, an executive order.
Yeah, the Bush administration, ran all these poor people out of their homes with the housing crisis. Now they're stuck in the streets, and our solution is to imprison them.
Yep.
It's just appalling.
It is. It truly is. I mean, it really and truly is. There are serious problems here. I mean, first of all, housing costs have gone up so dramatically since the 2008 housing crisis, since the Bush crash. And in large part because housing has been turned into an investment commodity. And now you've got, big investment groups that are buying, in some cities, the majority of new homes. Excuse me. On top of that, now you've got 1/5, this was in the Financial Times day before yesterday, 1/5 of Americans now have a mortgage that is costing them more than 6%, or where they're paying more than 6%, and is costing them, a significant, I forget the percentage, but there's this threshold percentage, a significant portion of their income. And according to that Zillow study from a couple of years ago, when housing costs go above 32 or 33% of income, that's when you start seeing homelessness. So you've got that problem, the affordability problem, which is being largely caused by these investment houses, these greedy banksters in New York, largely. And then you've got a mental illness problem that has been festering ever since Reagan, shut down federal support for mental health and mental hospitals. And then on top of that, you have, basically a crime problem associated with this as well. So, I mean, the whole thing is a mess, and Trump's solution is just lock them up. I mean, just the most brutal thing he can think of. So, yeah, Pete, I'm with you.
Building prisons all around our country. It's just
over 50% of people in prison right now are diagnosably mentally ill. Our mental health system is our prisons, and that's why we have more prisoners than all the other countries in the world combined. Pete, thanks for the call. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. I remember my dad's Republican Party, the Republican Party of Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower, who ran on advocacy for democracy around the world, for a clean environment, for honest wages, for unions, for building infrastructure, for government balanced spending, for peace in the world. This is from his 1956 campaign.
Eisenhower knows how to deal with the Russians. He has met Europe's leaders, has got them working with us. Elect the #1 man for the #1 job of our time. November 4th, vote for peace. Vote for Eisenhower. A paid bill.
Right. Vote for peace. And now the Republicans are the party of, military boondoggles and corruption and hate and anti-union and everything, the opposite of everything Eisenhower stood for. Will the Republican Party survive this? What are they going to come back as? There's a whole op-ed about this titled Goodbye Liz Cheney over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
This is a test of the emergency fascism system. Do not adjust your conscience.
He came down the golden tower, whispers wrapped in fear and power, spoke of rapists, built a wall, a test to see if we would fall. They cheered, they clapped, the press stood still. Another test, another chill. Truth was twisted into lies, wrapped in flags and alibis. This is the test of tyranny, step by step into the dark, where
Well, about
silence
52
is
minutes past the hour. Back to your calls here. Mark in Missoula, Montana. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Tom, Teresa and I catch your show on Free Speech TV, and I also get Sue Stack. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to say your call takers are very good, polite,
Mateo's
friendly.
a great guy, and occasionally Jeremy fills in when he's out, and they both do a great job. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm thinking about the ICE agents and what they are going to get paid and the bonuses that they are offered. And recently I was watching a video that was taken by a Mr. Kenny Lanez in West Palm Beach, where he was detained, pulled out of his car and detained by ICE agents. It's posted on J.C. Korea's Real Talk. Anyway, during the detention, when they've thrown him on the ground, the ICE agents are making disparaging comments about Mr. Lanez, and one of them talks about the way he smells, and another agent says, yeah, but just think about the $30,000 bonus you're getting.
Yeah, I've seen the video. We talked about it day before yesterday when it came out.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, do you know, because I've researched it and haven't been able to find anything, are ICE agents getting a bonus for meeting a quota, or some of the vigilante free?
If they're not, they clearly think they are. Yeah. And we don't know if these guys were ICE agents or if they were vigilantes who are looking for a bounty, because apparently there's a bounty now that the government is paying also. Although I haven't been able to confirm that. It's, there's a bunch of stuff happening under the surface here that that is very, very troubling, with these secret police and the militarization or authorization of basically bounty hunters, of private police. So, Mark, we all need to do a little more work on this. I'm expecting that some of the good investigative reporters out of places like ProPublica, which, by the way, is really worthy of our support, will continue on this. But, yeah, it doesn't look good. Mark, thanks for the call, and thanks for pointing all that out. Cindy in Morton Grove, Illinois. Hey, Cindy, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how's it going? So last week they came out with some kind of wholesale reports saying that wholesale prices hadn't gone up and they were holding steady. I own a gift store in St. Joseph, Michigan that's a single brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. I just ordered from about 50 vendors for my fall and Christmas season. And I'll tell you, don't believe a word that is coming out of this government because wholesale prices are up across the board and not a tiny bit. And this is before these tariffs have even really taken effect. But they're up a lot. Like coffee mugs that used to cost me $6 wholesale that I would sell for $12 are now $9 wholesale. That's like a 30% increase. Wow. And it's just across the board with everything. I mean, I started getting emails from all my vendors about 2 months ago saying, June 1st or July 1st or whatever, prices are going up 22%, 26%. So don't believe what you're hearing on the news that wholesale prices
I think they're cooking the books, Cindy.
They're total. I mean, they're just like, I listened to that report and I was just like, BS. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a store owner. I would know this.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I think one of the points that they were making was that producer prices are not up, but retail prices are, indicating that, tariffs are being passed along. But that doesn't make sense either, because, your producer, unless that's producer prices in the United States, but so much of the raw material that we use here is coming from overseas, particularly things like steel. And so just none of it makes sense. And
no, there are a few made in USA companies that have not raised their prices at all. We sell lots of postcards, magnets, buttons, coasters. All those are made in the U.S., and none of them have gone up a penny.
Yeah.
But I think once the tariffs take effect, they probably will. Like you said, it's their material.
Cindy,
thank you. And one last thing for your audience. Everybody get 12 new people to listen to Thom Hartmann. That's how we can save America.
God bless you, Cindy. And thank you for the call, and thanks for sharing your personal story with us. It really is appreciated.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
And thanks for listening to WCPT. Yeah, we're hitting the top of the hour here on the other side of the break. Jason Egenberg is going to be with us, so you're going to find this absolutely fascinating.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
We're reading today from Truth in Our Times by David E. McCraw, Deputy General Counsel of the New York Times, the number 2 lawyer for the New York Times. This is from Chapter 1, titled Election Day. It opens with a tweet from Donald Trump. The failing New York Times has been wrong about me from the very beginning. Sadly, I would lose the primaries. Said I would lose the primaries on the general election. Fake news. November 8, 2016. At 10 p.m., I made one last circuit of the newsroom. Our CEO, Mark Thompson, stood near the political desk, looking on with his wife and a small group of others connected somehow to the Times. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan remained in doubt, but the reality was sinking in. Donald Trump was on the verge of winning the American presidency. I'd been in newsrooms on election nights before. I know how it's supposed to be. The only thing that ever mattered was the horse race, think Gore-Bush, or the historic moment, think Obama-McCain. There was no investment in which candidate was winning. He or she was destined to disappoint in the long run. And the dominant emotion was a certain not quite cynical detachment amid the electric buzz of the vote count and projections and the anticipation of relief that the endless push of the campaign was finally over. Sure, you couldn't ignore the victories or the big picture moments, and the day after stories would be celebratory in their way, duly restrained, but with a nod to victory itself. Not unlike the next day account of a Super Bowl game or Game 7 of the World Series. Capture the triumph for a night or relish the race too close to call. Leave the dancing and crying for others, for the believers. But this night was like no other election night. There had been an investment, not just journalistic, but spiritual. Donald Trump had campaigned not just against Hillary Clinton, but also against the New York Times and the American press, the mainstream American press. And his astonishing rise to the top of the Republican Party had been built on his near daily attacks on facts, on the very idea that facts matter. For journalists who approach truth like a secular religion and who have seen 1,000 times how a single true story could gut the political career of a lying politician, it had been a year of faith-shaking disbelief. A line had not just been crossed, but obliterated. The shock was palpable as the numbers came in, laced for some with the fading hope for a different outcome among people who generally wanted nothing more than a story worth telling. And there was still a paper to put out, a reckoning to account for. It was too much on an already long night. I slipped away. At the elevators, I ran into Sue Craig and a guy who was obviously not from the Times. Sue had broken one of the biggest stories of the campaign. She was the one who went to her mailbox one day in September and found pages from Donald Trump's tax returns in an envelope. She introduced me to her acquaintance. He had once worked for Trump. I didn't ask why he was there. Like me, Sue had decided to get away. "It's too weird here," she said. We all got on the elevator. Sue, who had written a devastating story about Trump, me, whose letter to Trump's lawyers had lit up the internet for a week in October, and one of Trump's guys. We rode in silence, a strange tableau on the strangest night of the year. 14 hours earlier, as I came into the building, the Times security guard had called me over. They wanted to make sure I knew about the plans for the next morning. In the quirky ways that things happen at the Times, I had become the lawyer to see for all the things that security guys encountered, from the intruder who pilfered women's shoes to the anonymous letter weaponized with razor blades. The Times was printing thousands of extra newspapers, and tables were going to be set up outside for all the people who would be showing up to buy the New York Times for posterity's sake. The headline, I later learned, was going to read, "Madam President." We had been caught flat-footed 8 years earlier when Barack Obama had made history. By the time I arrived for work early in the morning of the 2008 election, the line was already starting to snake down the sidewalk. Soon there were hundreds of Obama supporters who thought, and why wouldn't they, that the place to buy a copy of the New York Times was surely at the New York Times. Lots of things happen at the Times building. Selling newspapers is not one of them. Employees were pressed into emergency duty to cart bundles of newspapers from the Times printing plant in Queens, and the long lines outside the building stretched on into the afternoon. But it was Obama's victory in 2012 that was on my mind this morning. I vote in a neighborhood that is predominantly black and middle class. In 2012, following a drumbeat of stories about how Republicans hoped to suppress voter turnout, I walked into my polling place at a local school 8 minutes after it opened. The line already extended back to the schoolhouse door. "Did y'all sleep here?" a guy wanted to know as he stepped into the foyer. On this morning in 2016, I had arrived before dawn. I was the only one in line at my precinct's table. That all seemed like a strangely distant memory as midnight approached. I had made my escape from the building with Sue and the Trump guy. At home, I sat alone in the glow of the TV screens as the states that mattered fell into place for the Republicans. I turned it off. Donald Trump was about to become president of the United States. The next morning, in a light drizzle on a gray November day, the newspaper sales tables were set up outside the building as planned. No one stopped. The vendors sat idly amid the stacks. There was no Madam President front page. Instead, the headline read, "Trump Triumphs," and the first two paragraphs of the lead story talked about how the vote threatened convulsions throughout the country and made an early mention of those who had watched with alarm the rise of Trump. Nearly half the country had voted for the man. I had just spent a weekend in October back in rural Illinois, in my hometown, and for a moment I allowed myself to see the coverage through the eyes of the rest of America, where, at least for this one night, his victory represented a certain kind of hope that change was going to come at last. Truth in Our Times by David McCraw.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. One of the Substack newsletters that I religiously read that I think is just often brilliant, always useful and informative, is written by a guy named Jason Egenberg. It's substack.com/Jason Egenberg or Jason Egenberg, Egenberg, by the way, or jasonegenberg.substack.com. I'm pretty sure. And Jason's on the line with us. Jason, welcome to the program, and congratulations on some really powerful writing that you've been doing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciated that. And coming from you, I don't know that there's a higher compliment anyone can get. This is a time where I think we all need to be speaking out, and we all need to be sharing our thoughts, and when we're seeing things that just aren't right, and for me at least, downright un-American, we need to say it.
Yeah, amen. Do I have all the information right on how people can find your website and everything?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not the foremost expert on how to find people on the internet. I got that.
So you wrote a piece the other day called "The Tower That Tells the Truth," and this article, this is what, I reached out to Sean and asked her to book you based on this article, because it was so profoundly shocking and also informative. You start out with the story of Belgrade. I've not been to Serbia, but I was in Croatia some years ago with Tom Hayden. In fact, we spent a week in Dubrovnik and with our families, and you can still see the bullet holes, right, in the old city, around the outside of the city. And people remember the war. I was doing my show from a local radio station. They let us borrow a studio, and I asked the guy who owned the station, what was the war like and what happened to him and his family. And he just broke down crying. His wife had been raped and his daughter had been murdered by the Serbs. And so anyhow, in Belgrade, there's this building that was bombed by NATO in 1999 that they've been preserving as kind of a memorial to the war. Tell us about that as a starting point for your article.
So when the United Nations began, when we go back to the early 90s, post the Cold War, when a lot of the dictatorships and the Iron Curtain fell down, the United States made it very clear that we were not going to allow genocide. We were not going to allow religious persecution. And of course, everybody knows the UN went in and bombings began by the UN, which at the time was a little critical under the Clinton administration, and under the Bush administration. But there were these buildings in Belgrade that were government buildings that were destroyed, that were bombed, and they became the symbol of what happens when dictators try to ethnically cleanse areas.
It's sort of like preserving Auschwitz, or Dachau.
In a way, yes. In a way, that's a perfect example. They became these symbols. You go back to Tiananmen Square, and obviously there were no symbols today about what happened in Tiananmen Square. But yes, it was this symbol of what happened. It was a symbol of that ruled what was the parts of the former Yugoslavia.
Right. So now what is?
It stood for 30 years and was recently torn down.
Right, and it's being torn down because
our president's company will be building a tower where that building and that memorial, in a way, a memorial as we created here in the United States at Ground Zero, where that memorial stood, that reminder of history. The Trump organization will be building Trump Tower apartments where that one stood.
Jeez.
And I think the irony of that is unbelievable.
Yeah. Not to mention, Trump, basically profiting off his presidency in a way that George Washington has to be rolling over in his grave. Now, you, in your article, we're talking with Jason Egenberg. His Substack newsletter, the article that we're talking about is titled "The Tower That Tells the Truth." JasonEgenberg.substack.com is the website, I believe. You use that as the starting point in your article to step off into this larger discussion about how really definitely since the end of World War II, but I would argue largely since the end of World War I, with Woodrow Wilson wanting the League of Nations and all that kind of stuff, that the United States has basically been in the democracy business. We've been in the business for a century anyway, more or less, of promoting the idea of power flowing from the people, that the politicians are servants of the people, that democracy is the best form of government out there. And suddenly now with the Trump administration, that has come to a screeching halt. In fact, it's being reversed. Tell us about that.
I used to say America, despite some of the things we've done during the Cold War, how we propped up certain types of governments to stop communism, we in a way were the world's moral compass. We didn't always act that way. But what we said was humanity and freedom always matter. And as we've ceded the world stage, as we've stepped away from that moral compass, the fear of American, I don't want to say retribution, but what America would do if certain lines were crossed is being erased. And the reason I chose Trump Tower being built was just because of the irony of it, but that symbol, that moment in time where we said no, where we said this is not okay. We will not allow ethnic cleansing. We will not allow people to be persecuted because of their religion. We will stand up and we will stand with them. Since 2017, that is eroded. That is gone. And we're seeing more and more brutality throughout the world, whether it's what's going on with Russia and the Ukraine, the Sudan, whether it's Israel and Gaza. We're just seeing the morality of the world erode. And it was America who took the lead in that. We believed in freedom and democracy and equality, and we sent that message through the world. And now there's a vacuum.
We literally sent that message to the world. We had, Radio Free Europe. We had Radio Liberty. We were broadcasting, in dozens of languages all over the world, messages of democracy. We had the U.S. Peace Agency. We had USAID. We had all these federal facilities, and now Carrie Lake is running our propaganda operation.
Which is horrifying.
Yeah.
Which is one of the most horrifying. Which is one of the most horrifying things. I can't even. There are no words to describe the thought of Carrie Lake running our, running our message to the world.
She is, for people who don't know, she's the crackpot Republican out of Arizona, I believe it is, who ran for governor and lost, and then claimed that the election was rigged, and is full-on conspiracy nut, QAnon.
If you listen to Carrie Lake, there's no such thing as free elections in the United States. Everything is rigged by the Democrats. Exactly. Votes come in the middle of the night. And This is a woman sending our message of freedom out to the world. And it's not so much that she's changing the message. We're getting rid of that. We're getting rid of that. We're getting rid of that voice that was so important throughout the world. And it comes back to asking ourselves, who are we as a country? Who are we now? And I get into debates with a lot of people. Well, America did this, America did that, but we were its moral compass. When we were the voice of freedom. We were this, I don't want to use the word saviors because that's such a ridiculous word, but we were hope.
Yeah, no, I mean, we screwed up a lot of stuff, Pinochet and Mossadegh and blah, but you're absolutely right. We were the shining city on the hill, to quote Ronald Reagan.
Well, look, Saddam Hussein justified an ends to a mean in the Cold War. The Iraq-Iran war was a proxy war between us and Russia.
Yeah.
So, historically, Venezuela, a lot of the Central American countries, the things we did down there, the years we left Noriega in power.
Yeah.
In Panama, we allowed the drug cartels to take over in Colombia. So America's got a lot of faults. Let's not kid ourselves. The things that we've done, but there was this sense of this beacon of hope that we were able to portray to the world that is now gone.
Yeah. So Jason, I only have a minute and 20 seconds before we hit a hard break that I can't control. This seems to me to be the Trump administration basically announcing, we don't care about democracy anymore because we intend to deconstruct democracy here in the United States. And it sure looks to me like that's what they're doing. What say you?
I also think we're going back to an isolationist point of view. I think a lot of MAGA's existence comes from this wrong notion that so much money is spent in foreign policy. I think the damage they did with USAID is extremely important. That was a vessel to funnel money into other governments. The CIA, actually, let's be honest, did use that to help funnel money to stop dictatorships, to stop the flow of communism, to run organizations. But it was a vital part of how we distributed money around the world, and that's gone. And yes, the message we are sending to the world today is that America, as it once was, the freedom of hope, the freedom of democracy, the American experiment, is withdrawing from the world, but we're also withdrawing from freedoms, where the assault on freedom of speech, the assault on freedom, on all of our freedums.
Yeah, on universities, on journalists, on judges. I mean, this is,
he's going after journalists now.
Yeah.
What's going on at CBS, what's going on at ABC.
Yep.
What he did yesterday to Caitlin Collins.
Yep. Jason, I'm out of time here, but Jason Egenberg, check out his Substack newsletter, EGENBERG, jasonegenberg.substack.com. Thanks so much for dropping by, Jason.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's 18 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Stick around. And welcome back. Oops, let's get over here. There we go. Hannah in Chicago. Hey, Hannah, what's on your mind today?
Hi, I'm just calling because, we were talking about Project 2025 and their plan to address homelessness and build mental institutions and force people into them. Mm-hmm. So my question is, I'm sure it's not a simple answer, what is the alternative? What would a progressive mental health system look like in the United States? And what about getting, groups together to talk about that and put that forth in opposition to their plan?
You want to create and sustain, as most developed countries have, a mental health system that looks very similar to your physical health system. The core of it being local, small, community-based treatment centers, facilities, physicians' offices that everyone has access to. Right now, hang on just a second. Pardon me. Right now, a lot of insurance policies don't cover psychological services, and when they do, it's spotty or they fight payment, and most of them don't cover long-term services. So, number one, we've got to fix that. Then the second level of care is kind of the equivalent of having urgent care centers and crisis centers, where you've got short-term residential facilities that people can check themselves into or be checked into if necessary. And then, of course, the third level is like hospitals, where you've got, long-term care and, dealing with people with really severe problems. And we don't have any of those three that really function properly here in the United States because of the way that we've funded this stuff. So that's how I think it should be working, Hannah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good talking to you. Appreciate the call. Yep. Gabe in Placerville, California. Hey, Gabe, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, how you doing? Hey, Tom, I was wanted to get your opinion on this new MAGA awakening, anti-Israel backlash, and to me, I think it's disingenuous, and I don't think really MAGA really cares about the Palestinians, and that there's really just an anti-Semitic agenda. But what's most concerning to me is that some people on the left are really starting to cozy up to them. For example, I just saw that Anna Kasparian from Young Turks appeared on Tucker Carlson's show, who, is obviously an anti-Semite. He's had Holocaust deniers on his show. He's had Candace Owens on his show. He's promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jeffrey Epstein working for Mossad, which there's no proof of. And, if there needs to be a bipartisan bill to stop the genocide that's going on in Palestine, with someone like Bernie Sanders getting together with Marjorie Taylor Greene to do it, I mean, so be it. But I really think these people are just wolves in sheep's clothing.
Well, I wouldn't call Anna the left to start out. But beyond that, I think what's happening is that many of the MAGA people are just sad. They're not psychopaths, not all of them. I mean, obviously the leadership is. But, they're watching the images on television of starving children, and it's touching them. And, and it's causing a backlash. And I see that as a good thing. I'm not going to, reach out to them and say, hey, let's kumbaya here. But I do think that the phenomena that you're describing is real. And it's cutting through and past, their own anti-Semitism, in fact, in my opinion. Gabe, I got to run, but thank you for the call. 22 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of this break. Stay with us. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. So what do we call the really, really mind-bogglingly rich? At the founding of the Republic, they were referred to as speculators or moneyed interest or aristocrats. In the years leading up to the Civil War, we called them the cotton lords and the plantation aristocracy. In the late 19th century, they were the robber barons. In the 1930s, FDR called them the economic royalists. But since the Reagan Revolution, we've just called them billionaires. And now, some of them want to call themselves tech bros. Like, that's kind of a good thing, like tech is positive and bros, like Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy in American business culture. So we need a new phrase. I would like to suggest the morbidly rich. Morbidly suggests unhealthy. And the vast riches that some of these people have is unhealthy to our democracy, particularly since 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court said that morbidly rich people can buy politicians. And it's unhealthy for them, too. So morbidly rich. There's an op-ed over at HartmannReport.com all about it. Check it out.
I used to walk these streets unafraid, head held high, no need to explain, but now the boots are back, the whispers too, and they're looking for someone who looks like you. They don't knock, they demand, no room for doubt. In your own hometown, you're a stranger now. They say it's law, they say it's peace, but all I hear is papers, please. Papers, please, in the land of the free.
25 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So Bernie is out there, and he is kicking ass. On Friday, August 8th, he will be in Wheeling, West Virginia. On Saturday, August 9th, he will be in Lenore, West Virginia at 11:30 in the morning. And then also on August 9th, he will be in Charleston, West Virginia at 3:30 in the afternoon. He's doing two of these things in West Virginia. Then on August 10th, he's doing 2 of them in North Carolina. The first in Greensboro at 11:30 in the morning. The second at 3:30 in the afternoon in Asheville. I don't know if this is his Fighting Oligarchy tour. I don't know if he's going to have AOC with him or not. He has in the past, but sometimes he does them with her and sometimes he doesn't. And this press release doesn't specify. Meanwhile, our geeky science for the day, or crazy alert, I'm not sure, it could be one or the other. 25 people were injured in a severe case of turbulence that forced a Delta Airlines jet that was flying from Salt Lake City, Utah to Amsterdam to make an emergency landing in Minneapolis. The turbulence hit as the meal was being served, which threw the flight attendants and food into the air. And just, it was, one of the guys who was on the plane said, I just watched a wine cart get thrown into the air. And then Paul Williams, who is an atmospheric scientist at the University of Reading, told the BBC, quote, "We can expect a doubling or tripling in the amount of severe turbulence around the world in the next few decades as a result of global warming." That's the global warming that Donald Trump tells you is a hoax, that the Lee Zeldin, the new administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, is just ending all science about and saying, no, we're not going to talk about that anymore. In fact, we're not even going to do research on that anymore. They just shut down their major scientific research branch within the EPA. I mean, this is just general insanity. On the other side of the break, I'll be picking up your calls. We'll start with Kevin in Santa Rosa, listening on KNYP, and 202-808-9925 is the telephone number. Stick around. We'll be right back with you on the other side of this break.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, J.D. Vance would really rather you didn't know all about. I'll be right back with you. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Settlers, The Mythology of the White Proletariat, The True Story of the White Nation by J. Sakai, published by Morningstar Press in 1989. This is from Chapter 2, The Foundations of Settler Life. The life of European settlers and the class structure of their society was abnormal because it was dependent upon a foundation of conquest, genocide, and enslavement. The myth of the self-sufficient white settler family clearing the wilderness and supporting themselves through their own initiative and hard labor is a propaganda fabrication. It is the absolute characteristic of settler society to be parasitic, dependent upon the super-exploitation of oppressed peoples for its style of life. Never has Euro-American society completely supported itself. This is the decisive factor in the consciousness of all classes and strata of white society from 1600 to now. Settler society was raised up above the level of backward old Europe by a foundation of conquest. This conquest was a miracle drug for a Europe convulsed with the reaction of decaying feudalism and deadly capitalism. Shot into the veins of the Spanish feudal nation, for instance, the miracle drug of the New World conquest gave Spain the momentary power to overrun North Africa, Holland, and Italy before her historical incident waned. Like many such fixes for Euro-Americans, this conquest was addicting. It was habit-forming and rapidly indispensable, not only culturally, but in the mechanism of an oppressor society whose lifeblood was new conquest. We'll examine this later in the relationship of settlerism to imperialism. For now, it's enough to see that this conquest is a material act of great magnitude, an economic and social event as important as the emergence of the factory system or the exploitation of petroleum in the Middle East. We stress the obvious here because the Euro-American settlers have always made light of their invasion and occupation, although the conquered territory is the precondition for their whole society. Traditionally, European settler societies throw off the propaganda smoke screens that they didn't really conquer and dispossess other nations. They claim with false modesty that they merely moved into vacant territory. So the early English settlers depicted America as empty, a howling wilderness, unsettled, sparsely populated, just waiting with a vacant sign on the door for the first lucky civilization to walk in and claim it. Theodore Roosevelt wrote defensively in 1900, quote, "The settler and pioneer have at bottom had justice on their side. This great continent could not have been kept as nothing but a game preserve for squalid savages," end of quote. It is telling that this lie is precisely the same lie put forward by white Afrikaner settlers who claim that South Africa was literally totally uninhabited by any Africans when they arrived from Europe. To universal derision, these European settlers claim to be the only rightful historic inhabitants of South Africa. Or we can hear similar defenses put forward by the European settlers of Israel, who claim that much of the Palestinian land and buildings they occupy are rightfully theirs, since the Arabs had allegedly decided to voluntarily abandon it all during the 1948-49 war. Are these kinds of tales any less preposterous than those put forward by Euro-American settlers? America was spacious and sparsely populated only because the European invaders destroyed whole civilizations and killed off millions of Native Americans to get the land and profits they wanted. We all know that when the English arrived at Virginia, for example, they encountered an urban, village-dwelling society far more skilled than they were in the arts of medicine, agriculture, fishing, and government. This civilization was reflected in a chain of 300 Indian nations and peoples stretching from the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, many of whom had highly developed societies. There was, in fact, a greater population in these Indian nations in 1492 than in all of Western Europe. Recent scholarly estimates indicate that at the time of Columbus, there were 100 million Indians in the hemisphere, 10 million in North America, 25 million in Central Mexico, and an additional 65 million elsewhere in Central and South America. These numbers have long been concealed since they give rise to the logical question of what happened to this great mass of people. The European invaders, Spanish, Dutch, English, Portuguese, and French, simply killed off millions and millions to safeguard their conquest of the land and provide the disposable slave labor they needed to launch their new world. Conservative Western historical estimates show that the Spanish reduced, in quotes, the Indian population of their colonies from some 50 million to only 4 million by the end of the 17th century. And from the 10 million Indians who once inhabited North America, after 4 centuries of settler invasion and rule, there were in 1900 perhaps 200,000 to 300,000 surviving descendants in the United States. This was the very substantial down payment towards the continuing blood price that third world nations have to pay to sustain the Euro-American way of life. So when we hear that the settlers pushed out the Indians or forced the Indians to leave their traditional hunting grounds, we know that these are just code phrases to refer politely to the most barbaric genocide imaginable. It could well be the greatest crime in all of human history. Only here, the Adolf Eichmanns and Heinrich Himmlers had names like Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Jackson. The point is that genocide was not an accident, not an excess, not the unintended side effect of virile European growth. Genocide was the necessary and deliberate act of the capitalists and their settler shock troops. The book
Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag you're it.
Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled American Caesar, Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days. Check it out.
I've seen the world in shadows and blood. Kids dodging bullets, no help from above. Presidents for sale in gold leaf rooms. Bribes whispered under foreign moons. But I never thought I'd see it here, where freedom's fading into fear. A man in red, a heart so cold, trading stars and stripes for gold. Will corruption be Trump's Achilles heel?
the truth break through what he won't reveal? He's shaking hands
Well,
with
let's hope so,
tyrants.
huh? Welcome back. What's on your mind today? Kevin in Santa Rosa. Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Hi. Okay, you were talking about the California law that eliminated gerrymandering, and we got rid of gerrymandering via an initiative. And in California, the legislature and the governor cannot even modify anything that's passed via initiative. They can't touch it. And therefore, the California legislature can't re-implement gerrymandering. The best that they could do would be they could put an initiative on a ballot, and then we would all vote on that. Now, when the original and the initiative to eliminate gerrymandering was on the ballot, both parties were against it because gerrymandering protects incumbents, but we passed it anyway.
Right.
So, and now...
Do you recall the margin by which it passed?
It was pretty big, I think.
Yeah.
Before it was passed, we had 19 Republicans in the House. Now we have 9. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
well, that was as a result of gerrymandering back during the Reagan governorship, or
right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We passed this in 2008 or 10, something like that.
Okay, so it's recent.
And and then I went back through the history of this last week, and we generally had around 20 Republicans in the House, and the highest I saw in the last couple decades was 26. It reached a low point in 2018 when it was 7. Then it went up to 11, then 12. Now and then in 2024, Democrats gained 3 seats. We're down to 9. And gerrymandering was a disaster for California because the state legislatures were also gerrymandered. And in California, we have a law that says that to pass a state budget, they need a 2/3 vote in both houses, and we could never get supermajorities. And after 2010, that problem is fixed.
Interesting. As a result of ending
basically,
gerrymandering.
we had given the Republicans a filibuster to control the budget so they could control the state.
Right. I get it.
Okay, so people turn their brains on. I don't see us putting that back. I think we should keep California as an example of how states should get rid of gerrymandering, and they ought to look at our initiative law because it makes California a democracy.
I get that, Kevin, but you know that there's not a single Republican-controlled state in the nation that is going to do what you just said.
That's right. I don't know how the Democrats work on that. I mean, I think that
because ballot initiatives can't be altered by the legislature.
Right. We passed that initiative law in 1911. I looked it up.
Yeah, that was the great progressive upswelling, that came with the Teddy Roosevelt and William Howard Taft presidencies. That was when about half the states in the United States got, ballot initiative laws, because so many legislatures were so corrupt. I totally get the history of it, Kevin. I'm just wondering if Gavin Newsom wants to do something. Basically, it sounds from what you're saying, and I'm trusting you to be more well-informed about this than I am. You live there, and obviously you're paying attention. I'm wondering what can he do other than put a new ballot initiative on the ballot, and then, if he's going to do this for the 2026 election, what's he going to do this November, 2025, or call a special election?
Yeah, the time is looking really compressed.
Yeah,
and when we a couple of years ago, there was something about us like getting rid of daylight savings or something. What we actually did was that daylight savings law was put into effect via initiative in 1948. And we passed an initiative to give the legislature permission to modify it.
Oh, interesting.
That's pretty strict.
Yeah, it is. Kevin, thank you. This has been a very informative phone conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I've been meaning to tell you this for weeks. So
okay, well, I'm glad you got through.
All right.
Thanks for the call. And thanks for listening to KNYP. Yep. Sandy in Hillsdale, Illinois, or Hinsdale, Illinois. Hey, Sandy, what's up?
Yeah, Tom, your guest that you had on, the author, I believe
Jason Egenberg?
Yes, I believe so. He was talking specifically about how democracy, the way we tried to spread it around the world, for the most part, we were trusted, we were respected, and even through our own mistakes, democracy in our country had a reputation. It had a reputation. I didn't know that Carrie Lake is now in charge of Radio Free Europe.
Yep.
But my question to you is that, I'm thinking of this in a personal nature. Let's say a friend or a family member that you've trusted for most of your life suddenly changes so dramatically and starts lying or cheating or behaving so immorally. That person might never gain your respect again. How does it work with nations?
Yeah, it's largely the same way, Sandy, and that's the problem. Jason Egenberg, in his op-ed over on Substack, he writes, this is just one paragraph I'll share with you. As the result of Trump ending basically any promotion or advocacy for democracy worldwide coming out of the United States, he writes, in Cambodia, journalists have been jailed under new laws criminalizing foreign interference. In Tanzania, opposition leader Tundu Lissu was arrested in May and charged with treason. In Indonesia, President Subianto has moved to militarize key domestic institutions and revise civilian control over government while silencing critics through legislation. In Nigeria, President Tinubu's administration passed a sweeping new security law that rights groups say effectively legalizes political suppression. And then, of course, we all know what's going on in El Salvador with President Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. These guys are all going full-on dictator because they no longer fear that the United States will chide them or stop them or punish them even. It's just an extraordinarily unhealthy thing. So
you don't see the, perhaps, let's say the next president, for instance, might be Gavin Newsom. Would that, would his presence change? Would we then become
I think
right
you'll
back?
see what you saw during the Biden administration, which is that the rest of the world is hopeful that America's back, but they're not entirely trusting us. And so it gets just a whole lot harder to do anything. And, it's going to take a genuine, widespread, large-scale repudiation of the Republican Party's embrace of fascism and the Republican Party's rejection of democracy, small d democracy, in order for any other democratic country in the world to begin trusting us. I just don't see how it happens, any other way. And, that's very troubling. I mean, it's extremely troubling, but
it truly is. It truly is for the future for our grandkids. Yeah. It truly is.
I don't see a solution. So, thank you for the call, Tim in New Berlin, Wisconsin. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I just have so many questions, but I'll try to tap it down a little bit. But just recently, there is no fascism coming out of the Republican Party. That's just, oh my God, you are wrong on so many topics. But I'll start with my first question. What part of illegal immigration do you not understand? Answer me that.
Tim, are you trying to have a reasonable conversation here, or do you think you're scoring points with these kinds of, weird,
well, no, I'm
gotcha
asking questions. I mean,
Tim, what part of illegal immigration do you not understand?
We are not a fascist country.
We're quickly becoming one, Tim.
Is going to be accused of treason very shortly because him and Comey and Brennan and Clinton made up the Russian collusion scandal. You don't talk about that.
Well, according to Marco Rubio, who is currently our Secretary of State, Tim, put a cork in it for a second. According to Marco Rubio, who is currently our Secretary of State, in the document that the Senate Republicans authored and he signed off on, Russia tried to intervene in our election in 2016 by hacking the DNC, and releasing Hillary Clinton's emails, and Donald Trump made heavy use of that. They also tried to intervene in 2016. And again, the CIA agrees with this. The National Security Council agrees with this. Marco Rubio agrees with this. And all of the Republicans in the Senate signed off on a document that said this in 2017. The other thing that the Russians did is they also were flooding Facebook using information that Paul Manafort gave them. Paul Manafort was Putin's guy in Ukraine, and he came over and then ran the Trump campaign. And if you don't know this stuff, you are just terribly and sadly uninformed.
Our country is in the best condition shape. Illegal immigration is almost at zero.
So?
And that's what we needed. That's what Trump was elected for. The tariffs are working.
Yeah, they're working to produce inflation. I'm a fan of tariffs, actually, Tim, but I just think that they shouldn't be done stupidly. I don't think you put tariffs on countries so that their leaders will come and suck up to you.
Look at all the trade agreements that Trump has negotiated.
He hasn't signed a single one, Tim. There's not one trade agreement that Trump has yet signed.
Europe, Japan, Taiwan.
Those are not trade agreements that are signed. Those are frameworks. Those are, we'll have a discussion. We'll agree to someday agree. But no, there are no trade agreements. Trump has not.
And Democrats are so buried that they'll never be elected anytime soon. So all these old people that are calling you and, oh my God, Trump's hey, the United States is respected. We don't have to be loved.
Americans don't like fascism. We fought a war against the fascists in Europe, and we're not really genuinely happy with the fascists in the GOP. So
that's your term. That's Democrats. Just like Trump being convicted, it was a bunch
So
of
what's
New
your
York
definition
people.
of fascism, Tim?
The definition of fascism. Let's see. Controlling the people, making them take shots, making them lose their jobs because they didn't take the jab. That's fascism.
Oh, okay.
That's fascism.
You really have gone down the rabbit hole, haven't you?
No, I've not.
Tim, thanks a lot for the call. I look forward to future conversations, but I'm hitting a hard break here. I can't stop it. So thank you for the call. And thanks for listening to us on Civic Media there in Wisconsin. 48 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you and more of your calls in just a second. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Indeed. We'll be right back with more of your calls in just a second. Stick around. And welcome back. Cindy in Toledo, Ohio. Hey, Cindy, what's up?
Hi, I'm nervous and excited to talk to you.
Okay.
I have the easiest idea of how we can double our numbers at the polls in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
If each of us Dems find one like-minded person who didn't vote in 2024, make sure they're registered and take them with us to vote. We can double our numbers.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I call it +1.
Okay. No, I think that's a marvelous idea, and I'd love to see something like that happen. So the +1.
I'm trying to get the word out.
Oh well, yeah, I think you just did. You just said it to a whole lot of people. So Cindy, thank you very much for the call. Larry in Mart, Washington. Hey, Larry, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's on your mind today? You're on the air. Larry?
Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air.
Whoa. That previous caller needs to be understood. The fact is this. He's talking about people about the people that's not coming to the borders and such. It costs exactly $165 per person that is staying in a prison or in a geo place or ICE.
Well, I think down in Alligator Auschwitz, it's costing over $700 per person per day.
Okay, now let's take that. You're saying 37,000. There's more than that.
Yeah.
So I want everybody on this planet to consider $165 a day times 37,000. That adds up to something like $2 million some odd dollars, $2,600,000 $150,000 a day.
Mm-hmm.
Times that by 365.
Sure.
Do the simple math.
Yeah.
It's $2 billion. $2 billion
that we're spending to lock up people that, in many cases, in fact, it seems increasingly like perhaps the majority of cases, these are people who already have received permission from our government to be here. They have work permits, or they're working on green cards, or they even have green cards.
Absolutely.
And they're being kicked out.
And the thing
because
is,
they have
what
brown skin.
people aren't considering, and what they're not considering is this: the average worker in a state that's a farm worker is maybe making $7.50 an hour times 9 hours a day, sometimes 10 hours a day. I want you to consider how much that is. That's actually about $70 a day. Okay, and they're paying the taxes and Social Security.
Yeah.
So the thing is this. So there you go, and you figure out, you take that 37,000 people or whatever that they're imprisoning, and you put that times how much money they're making and how much taxes they're paying. But the real deal is this: is that if it's costing us that, they're talking about changing Alcatraz. Alcatraz has a positive flow of $50 million a year to the U.S. that goes specifically to our national park.
Right, as a tourist site. Yeah.
Now,
and it also would cost a fortune to turn it back into a prison.
Million people, which is 1.3 million people. I know, but the thing is the cost is $43 million to try to change that over. In other words, I'm done with my conversation. You have a wonderful day. I admire you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for your kind words. And thanks for listening to us on KBCS. It's 52 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
Roll up, join the fight. We're taking on the billionaires. We're bringing back your rights. The revolution's here. We're knocking on the door. Welcome to Bernie's anti-oligarchy tour.
Yep, once again, Bernie on August 8th. He'll be in Wheeling, West Virginia, August 9th in Lenore, West Virginia, also in Charleston, West Virginia that day, on August 10th in Greensboro, North Carolina, and in Asheville, North Carolina. So Bernie's anti-oligarchy tour is rolling along. John in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
I got a couple of things I want to talk to you about. The first one is all these Democrats that keep coming on here talking about how the party ain't doing enough and this and that and the other. What have they done? What are they doing? Have they ever volunteered for a campaign? Have they ever, donated or done anything over the past 40 years like I have, to get Democratic leaders elected?
You're sounding like...
I've volunteered for...
Excuse
Go
me,
ahead.
John. Finish your thought. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, have they volunteered, to do anything for that? And it's really just hypocritical of them to sit over and say the party needs to do more of this and that and the other when they haven't done anything, and that includes showing up to vote.
No, I get it. You're sounding like my old friend Joe Madison, who when people would call up and say, well, they ought to quack, 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 and Joe would say, well, what are you going to do about it? And
No, I'm not saying what are you going to do about it. What I'm saying is what have you done?
Well,
because a lot of the same people that are doing this complaining really haven't even bothered to show up to vote, much less
maybe not in the past. I have a feeling an awful lot of them are going to be showing up in the future, John.
Well, yeah, the way things are getting worse, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
So I'm willing to overlook past transgressions of omission, and in the hope that we're going to see future behaviors of commission. John, I got to run, but thanks for the call. Right. It's great to hear from you. Do appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, and thank you for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It does require all of us. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you on the other side tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.